Welcome to Iowa Postgame here at the Voice of College Football. Nice win. Got the job done. Win's a win, right? We've been saying that for the last 3 weeks. No wins are pretty, it seems like, for the Iowa Hawkeyes. What's new as Iowa fans? We've grown to expect that over the years. And certainly with this, I don't want to call it an abysmal offense, but an offense that is not real impressive. We are here taking your calls, taking your chats, your comments. If you want to call us, 860-499-3332, 860-499-3332. We will be giving you periodic updates from Nebraska and Wisconsin. So if you're here hanging out with us, we're going to give you updates on the Nebraska-Wisconsin game. Well, I'm gonna paste this stat up here for everybody, and for all the Spencer Petras haters, you got what you wanted, right? Alex Padilla comes in here today, starts, plays every snap at quarterback for Iowa, and goes for a measly 6 of 17 for 83 yards and a pick. Now, I'm not here to bash Alex. I thought Alex actually played pretty well, but this should be some degree of proof that for anybody that doubted this previously, that it is clear that Iowa has much bigger issues offensively than just than just Spencer Petras. Okay, this offense is not built to be elite. Do want to give you a brief update. Nebraska driving now inside the 10. It's 21-14 Wisconsin. Okay, so let me add this up here. Again, I want to keep everybody posted. We do appreciate you being here for Iowa postgame. Again, you're welcome to call in. All right. So again, right now, it is 21-14 Nebraska into the red zone, down by the goal line, and we're waiting for a call here. It is a touchdown. So let's update that number now. Wisconsin and Nebraska, the score is now 21-20 here in the third quarter with an extra point pending. Again, if you're not keeping up with Iowa in the West Division race, Wisconsin needs to lose a game. If they lose to either Nebraska today or Minnesota next week, Iowa will win the West with a win against Nebraska. Okay. So, and I'll be honest, heading into this week, and I didn't really say this, I know Mark and I talked about it on the Iowa Live show Thursday night. I have a little bit more confidence in Nebraska being able to beat Wisconsin than I do Minnesota. Because if you look at the history of the Wisconsin-Nebraska series, Wisconsin very regularly seems to rack up a lot of yards against that Wisconsin defense. It's obviously not a good matchup for Wisconsin. I believe 2018, Nebraska had about 500 offensive yards against Wisconsin. I think 2019, they racked up close to 500 yards. So this is a Nebraska offense that knows how to move the Okay, let's catch up on some comments. Appreciate seeing Kevin here, as well as a number of other Iowa fans. Skylar here, go Big Red. Absolutely. Maybe the 1 week where we can feel okay saying go Big Red. Absolutely. And Kevin, this is the right attitude to have. I've heard fans this week saying, I don't want to win the West. I don't want to face Ohio State. That's such a loser's mentality. Okay. And we give Iowa's coaching staff a hard time every year about having a losing mentality offensively and late in clock management. And then we're going to sit here and say we don't want to go to the Big Ten championship because we don't want to get beat by Ohio State. That's such a poor attitude to have. So appreciate this comment from Kevin. It's absolutely the right mindset at this point. You can feel however you want to feel, but absolutely the right mindset. Jermaine, he has got it spot on. Thank God for Caleb Shudak. Absolutely. And going to give a moment. I do see a call here waiting. It looks like we got our phone line disconnected somehow. See if we can reconnect this for everybody. Hang tight here if you're on the line waiting to talk to us. Give us just a second here.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number and press pound. That was an invalid number. Please re-enter your show or meeting number, followed by the pound key.
Try it again.
That was an invalid number. Please re-enter.
Having some issues with our calling system. We've had these issues at times throughout this season. I'm not sure what prompts it, but hang tight. We'll get this fixed up for everybody. Jakob 22 with us. Nebraska and Wisconsin, they are tied right now. Skylar says, Alex is still better than Petrus. It's Brian Ferentz. I agree that Padilla gives them the best chance to win. I'm just saying Petrus was not. There were some people out there saying that Petrus was basically the only issue or the primary issue, and I don't even think that's a fact. I don't think you can say that given the performance today. John says Padilla still gives us more upside simply because he can avoid more sacks. That's absolutely true. We saw his ability to scramble. I thought there were some good moments from Brian Ferentz today. I'm not going to put this the numbers on Brian. I mean, there were moments in this game, as there always are, that I'm frustrated with Brian and his play calling. But you got to do what you got to do. This is, we have to accept that to a degree, this is what we have with this Iowa offense, and it's not probably going to change. It's not going to change this year, and it's probably not going to change under this administration. So again, 21-21 with Nebraska and Wisconsin. And yes, we do want to play Ohio State. If that's what it takes to go to the Big Ten title game, I don't understand why we would duck from the top dog. I don't quite understand that line of reasoning. Again, feel how you want to feel. You're an Iowa fan, and you say, I don't want to go and watch a Iowa-Ohio State beat down. Well, we don't know it's going to be a beat down, I guess. Michigan State didn't know it was going to be a beat down, and it certainly was. But a person just has to have some faith in their team. I understand that this offense has not really given Iowa fans much to put faith in. Again, we are trying to get these issues with the phone line figured out. All right. Let's try it one more time.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number and press pound. That was an invalid number. Please re-enter your show or meeting number, followed by the pound key. That was an invalid number.
Well, someone doesn't want us to take calls today. So while we get this figured out, let's try something else. We're going to go to plan B, folks. I want to be able to take calls today. We're going to do things a little differently. Let's see if we can pull this off here. All right. You want to call us? We're going to try a different line today. Okay. Again, apologize for the technical issue here. Nothing I can do about it. System either decides to work or it doesn't. So if you want to call us, this is the line for now. 515-635-1601. Okay. 515-635-1601. And if this doesn't work, then I really don't know what the explanation is. So again, give us a call, 515-635-1601. We're going to see what we can do here. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Alex, I appreciate you being patient with our technical issues. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
What'd you think of Iowa's victory today?
I was happy, frustrated, watching this game. Just a couple things. Some positive. I think the offensive line played a lot better. That inside zone run play we saw a lot of success with that. And I think that's, a positive step going forward. I think that's some growth we needed to see, especially going against in my opinion, a good Nebraska defense. And Padilla's, ability to get out of the pocket. I think obviously as fans, we've been itching and begging to see that, with Petras. So you look at, you put Petras in Padilla's spot in this game, there's probably 3 to 4 more sacks, and maybe the game goes a different way as well.
Right.
Yeah, he was 6 of 17, which, I looked at that and I obviously watched the entire game. There was a lot of drops by receivers. Goodson, I think, Nico Reganey had, 2. Goodson had 1. I think Keegan might have had 1 as well. The interception was on him, but I thought honestly the play calling in the first half was really good. I thought okay, we're doing what we need to do. We're calling the right plays. And then when we went 3, I think it was 2 outside zones and then a slant run play with the slant blocking, we went, 3 plays in a row, we lose yards and try to kick a 56-yard field goal. That's where the play calling, I think, just completely fell off, where it felt like we were just playing not to lose rather than, hey, let's just put our foot on the gas. Let's bury these guys, go into next week, go into next week ready to go.
Yeah. So second quarter, Alex, second quarter, they go 3 straight runs on a series, including on 3rd and 12 from the Illinois 36. And I understand the line of thinking from Brian and Kirk that, hey, let's get a couple yards on. We didn't get yardage on first or second enough to be able to set up a manageable third to where we're comfortably in field goal range. So we want to try to get something to give Shudak a better chance. They end up getting 2 yards on 3rd and 12, which gave them a 51-yard field goal, which Shudak made. But I agree with Padilla's ability to run the ball. Why not take a shot there? And if he doesn't have anything, then yeah, tuck it and go for 1 or 2, which is what they did with the handoff. But at least you have that opportunity to get a first down. And I agree, aggressive play calling just isn't this coaching staff suit, and I don't think it's ever going to be.
No, and then I think it was a series right after that where they get a face mask penalty on, I can't remember if it was Goodson or Gavin Williams, where he was trying to stiff arm. He got his hands in the face mask, and they fought back from that. They got a 3rd and 2, and they go into an empty set. I'm just like, why go to empty? Put a running back there, make them have that threat of running. And I'm not upset that they call the pass play. I was was upset by the fact that they went is in an empty set in the backfield. I didn't understand that at all.
Well, as we've talked about before, it makes more sense to go empty with Padilla than it ever does to go empty with Petrus. But I agree with you. There are very few circumstances that I would go empty because of just how this offense is set up. And when's the last time you've seen anything really good happen with an empty set at Iowa? I can't remember the last time.
No, and the thing is, like, I don't think we saw at least a designed, maybe there was one, maybe I'm not thinking of it, a designed QB draw or QB run play. You know, and I thought that's the perfect time to do it. You have an empty set. Illinois is like, okay, they're going to definitely pass. And then you have Padilla back there thinking about passing, and then he tucks it and runs and, you know, see what happens. But so, yeah, after that, those 3 run plays where we tried to kick a really long field goal, and then it just seemed like the play callings fell flat on its face. And the inside zone play was working, and it seemed like we got away from that in the second half. And, you know, we saw like kind of late in the fourth quarter where, you know, Goodson and Gavin were getting 13, 12 yards on a single run. And it's just, we you know, it's frustrating because you saw Minnesota last week, 4 toss sweeps in a row for huge yardage. It kept going back to it and says, hey, if you guys aren't going to stop it, we're going to keep doing it. There's one thing about Brian I get so frustrated with, and I think everyone else can too, is that, hey, something's working, and then we immediately go away from it. And the outside zone wasn't working. None of the outside stuff felt like it was doing anything except for getting maybe 1-2 yards, even some of the jet sweeps. I like the little wrinkle you threw in at the end where you reverse to Reganey and he tries to pass it to Padilla. You know, I think we got lucky with the roughing the passer penalty, but you know, it was kind of like, oh, hey, we tried one new play.
Something different. Something different.
Yeah. But overall, I think, you know, in the defense, I was worried. They gave up that first touchdown really early, but I thought about last year when Illinois went up 14-0 and Iowa came back and just said, yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I bet it was fun for you guys to have that lead. Now we're not going to let you have it again.
Right.
You know, and I thought like, okay. And then when we had that bad snap exchange on the punt and they only got 3 points, like, okay, the defense is now here to show up and just say not anymore.
Yeah. If there is one downside to just Phil Parker's defenses, just every single week, it seems like we start so slow. And I don't quite get why that can't be corrected. I understand, you know, everybody say, oh, they're feeling out the other team. Well, at some point you can't keep giving up opening drive touchdowns, right?
No, but we did see like Matt Hankins came out. I didn't hear he got that he wasn't playing today. He got injured. I don't know. I never heard an injury report on him. And then Jack Kerner was out. That one, he was dressed and looked like he was ready to go. But then I saw him on the sidelines like near the very end of the game. And he had his jersey on, but he had a hoodie underneath of it. So I don't know what happened to him, but Quinn Schulte, I think, played pretty good. I think so that future at safety looks bright. And then I think the defense, granted outside that first drive where they scored that touchdown, I think, you know, Illinois saw what Minnesota did to us and thought, hey, we have a better running back. No offense to Minnesota's running backs, are really good, but Chase Brown and Josh McCray, I think, are better. And say, hey, we have better running backs. We can exploit this. And Iowa the defense did a really good job. The linebackers, the defensive line, really just saying, no, we learned our lesson from last week.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, and it did take some time. And you're right. Hankins and Kerner both being out doesn't help. You know, I kind of thought they'd play. They did. They played a lot of Belton high safety along with Merriweather. But they did play at times. You mentioned Quinn Schulte. Of course, he made the play of the game there defensively in the fourth quarter. So I understand that line of reasoning too with these slow starts. We also got to remember that this is an issue. This is something that happens a lot with Phil's defenses, that they get started slowly even when they're full strength.
Yeah, true. But one more thing, one more question for you. Do you think that Jack Campbell was trying not to score that last touchdown because he looked a little tentative when he went?
I don't know what Jack Campbell was thinking because he did kind of wait before he went into the end zone, but he never really slowed down. I mean, he just kept looking back. At that point, you're up 2 scores already. There's no reason not to score, but he definitely was looking back towards his sideline. So I'm glad he got in. And then, of course, Illinois scored the late touchdown anyways. So in hindsight, that was actually a consequential touchdown from Jack.
Yeah, you think though if he goes down, like if he takes a knee down at the 1 and Iowa knees it out, I mean Illinois I think only had one timeout left. They could probably get the ball back.
But let's remember,
even then
let's remember last week when I tried to tell everybody that I thought it was a good idea that we not score, and I got ripped for it. So I'm never going to make that mistake again. Score at any opportunity you can.
Well, and I was kind of upset with that too, but then when you broke it down, it's like we don't want to score right away because then you get the ball back to Minnesota, and you take one side of it, and I don't think you're right or wrong which side you take. Either you score, you put Minnesota down by 2 scores where their offense hasn't, their offense or our defense has played good near that point to where you think you have confidence defense to stop Minnesota, or do you just not score and then say, hey, or, make Minnesota try to drive the length of the field in a very short amount of time. So it was,
right.
it's.
I understand both lines of reasoning. And I think fans are just tired of not going. Fans are tired of Kirk just not going for the kill shot. And I get that. I get tired of it too. But I also try to see things from his perspective. But overall, I think play calling I would agree with you, was better today. And I was going to talk about, too, the fact that Iowa has an issue. They need to – I don't want to talk about coaching staff changes until the season's over. But one change that needs to happen that I'm fine with talking about now is they need to get somebody who is exceptional at clock management, time and score. Like, we have no idea what we're doing, whether it be late in the second quarter or late in the fourth quarter. We rarely have any idea what we're doing managing the clock. And it's almost embarrassing. It's embarrassing to me.
No, and you talk about coaching change. Well, and I can point to what was it? Washington's offensive coordinator, John Donovan. He got fired last week, 2 weeks ago, because their offense was not producing anything.
Yeah,
it
does happen.
We've been stuck with Brian for 5 years. It's so. I'm not saying we need to fire him before the Nebraska game or even before the bowl game, but I think Iowa as fans, we want to. Something has to change, because I think we have we have great offensive weapons. Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce, maybe even Tyrone Tracy if he stays. I think they're good enough to where I don't think Iowa's ever going to be Ohio State, because we just don't get those types of athletes. But there's got to be something. Something's got to be different next year. And if it's the same old stuff, who?
Right. No, I agree, and I'm perfectly fine with talking about the coaching staff changes. I personally don't love the idea of getting rid of a staff member mid-season, unless it's something egregious, scandal, or something of that nature. But the other reason why I just don't have any, I don't have any interest in talking about Brian being fired at this point, because it's not going to happen. We can talk about it all we want. It's not going to happen.
Oh no, and I'm not expecting it to happen. But it's like with this team against Illinois and some of these other teams we face where we're better than, we don't put them away. And it's so frustrating as a Hawkeye fan. And I think you said it last week, and I may have said it. I called him last week and I said, I'm 31. I'll die at 50 because watching this Iowa team is going to cause me to have a heart attack.
Right.
These teams that we should just beat, we need to beat. And it feels like Kurt Ferentz, maybe it's Brian, doesn't want to hurt feelings. And he like second half play calling when we were up, 4? It was so conservative. It's like, why are we not,
yeah.
I don't know.
One thing that I think Kirk felt today, and I felt the same thing last week, as I think Kirk did, is I don't think anybody, even in the Iowa fan base, had any fears that Brandon Peters was going to lead that team to a game-winning drive. Did you? I did not.
Oh, well, no, but here's the thing. Have you noticed how these quarterbacks that face us that are not so great quarterbacks, Graham Mertz, Tanner Morgan, Aiden O'Connell coming in wasn't that great of a quarterback coming into the game, and we make them kind of look like superstars. I don't know what it is when these quarterbacks face Iowa, but they look like, Aiden O'Connell looked like he had a Heisman level game against Iowa, and then Tanner Morgan looked really good against Iowa as well. And I don't know if that's the defense or it's just the quarterbacks just they want to play well against Iowa, but I don't know. Maybe it's the D-line not getting pressure either. But yeah, Brent, I was worried about that because it seems like these quarterbacks that they don't look good. They're not great quarterbacks, yet they have a decent day at Iowa when they play Iowa.
Yeah, no, you're right. And let's remember Aiden O'Connell did have a huge game against Michigan State as well. But Michigan State's defense is terrible, as we saw today against Ohio State. Michigan State's won a lot this year with a porous defense. So, yeah, stubbornness. We have such a stubborn mindset on this staff, and it runs from the top down on each side. As good as Phil Parker is, he is a very stubborn defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and obviously that was very apparent in the Purdue game where David Bell was just running rampant all over our secondary, and he didn't change anything up with bracketing them, double coverage. It was, and I don't know, since that game, Matt Hankins has not looked good. I mean, obviously he didn't play in this game, but he's gotten, and in Minnesota, the 2 touchdowns they got, that was all on Hankins. Guy got a double move, and then he missed his assignment on the one tight end where he give him credit, he ran him down, trying to knock the ball loose, but.
Right. Well, that one I could argue was also schematics and Iowa's defense as a whole selling out against the run, and Hankins was just that outside fit. But I understand what you're saying, and you're right. He has gotten burned. The double move being perfect example. I'm sad that he wasn't able to play on Senior Day because he's not coming back next year. I don't. Does he even have eligibility? I don't think he does because this was his super senior year. So, yeah, it's too bad for him. He has been a pretty darn good cornerback here for Iowa. But yeah, he's not really. I don't want to say he's regressed, but his second half of the season has not nearly been what the first half was.
No, the only 2 defensive players that I know that cannot return next year are Van Valkenburg and Matt Hankins. So, right. But the other ones can. And Riley Moss may come back. I think Jack Turner definitely can come back. So, I mean, if we just lose those 2 guys, which I think one of them, maybe Moss, maybe Kerner, leaves, I think our defense is going to be a lot better next year, personally. But I've been on the phone a little too long. I'll let other people, anyone else call in, but thanks for taking my call.
All right, Alex, appreciate the call. All right. See if we can get our main line open for people. And if we're not, I don't know what to tell everybody to deal with what we have today. All right. Well, our line is still open. By the way, it is 28-21 right now. 28-21. You see it on the bottom ticker there. We're going to continue to update that. Adrian Martinez just threw an interception near midfield to give Wisconsin the ball up, already up a touchdown. So not going in the direction we want at this point, but at least Nebraska's in it with a chance in the fourth quarter. James comments, he says, I didn't give Alex chances. There were a lot of drops. Only thing that he did bad was throw and double coverage. He did have a couple of the drops were as a result of a little bit too much smoke. The throw to Tyler Goodson was a tough catch to make. Was it catchable? Yes, but it was a high throw, a lot of steam behind it, partly because Alex Padilla, was being pressured. And then there was another play. I'm trying to think who it was. Regani's dropping balls. I don't know where this is coming from. Regani's dropping balls. Keegan Johnson's dropping balls. Laporta's all of our receivers. None of our receivers are like sure-handed now. I can remember drops from basically everybody, and that's a little bit disconcerting. You'd like to think you have a guy who's sure-handed. I think most of our receivers catch it most of the time that it's thrown their way, but there have been times where everybody on this team has failed to rise to the occasion. Hawkeye Howard says the play calling still sucked. I don't know that I'd go that far. I understand the line of reasoning there, that you think the play calling sucked, but I do think there were moments in this game where Brian had some nice calls. But yeah, you can't be satisfied because there's a lot of improvement this offense needs to make. Do I think this Iowa team could beat Ohio State on neutral field? I don't. But at the same time, I don't think any of us thought Purdue would beat Iowa 24-7, and it happened. So you never know. Certainly Nebraska played Ohio State close. Oklahoma. Michigan still has to play Ohio State. Michigan beats Ohio State. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Ohio State misses out, right? Because Michigan would have the tiebreaker. Michigan State's got 2 conference losses now. So if Michigan beats Ohio State next week, Michigan represents. So I know everybody's assuming that Ohio State's in the championship game. That's not necessarily true. It may be true, but it may not be. All right. We are going to catch up on some comments here. Again, if you want to call us, our line is open, 515-635-1601 tonight. Not sure what the problem is with the other phone line, but our caller line is open, and we do have a call on the line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Well, this is Bob from Des Moines. I was just wondering if anybody besides me noticed Dia seemed to lock on to one receiver and never went through looking for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I see that with every Iowa quarterback. I saw that certainly a lot with Spencer Petras, and you're right. I saw it today with Alex Padilla, the interception being a perfect example of that. But Alex also made some really nice throws, and we have seen him go through his progressions. I just don't think this Iowa offense is built with a lot of ingenuity, and it doesn't give these Iowa quarterbacks a ton of freedom. Now, I could be wrong on that. Maybe Don Patterson, when he hops on with us tomorrow night, he'll tell me differently. I just don't think this offense is built to allow a quarterback to make a ton of different reads. You've got maybe one or two options and a check down. And so I think that sort of enables a quarterback staring down one receiver. But again, maybe I'm wrong on that. That's just my observation.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there drinking beer and watching it, so maybe I ain't seeing what's actually happening. But
I would take my chance. I would think drinking a beer might make the offense look a little bit better. Because there are times, Bob, when I don't know, the offense could look a whole lot worse. Again, not necessarily blaming Alex Padilla in that, but the offense still isn't that good. Now, let's be honest. Illinois, that's a good defense. People forget Illinois. They do have a good defense, and a win's a win. We have the tendency to nitpick these games, but Illinois' defense is not Michigan State's. That's a good unit.
Well, thanks for taking my call, and go Hawks.
Appreciate it, Bob. Go Hawks. All right. Well, our caller line's working out just fine. We only have one line open at a time. So if there's a caller on the line, please wait until that caller is off the line. We don't have the waiting room, unfortunately. So I apologize for that, but our singular line is open. 515-635-1601. Wisconsin 4th and 1 at the Nebraska 33, and Nebraska gets the stop. Nebraska takes over on downs. It's Nebraska football now, folks. 28-21, 10-19 to go in the game. The Huskers are not out of this. They get a huge stop on 4th down. And Iowa's hopes in the West are still alive. All right. M. Finn says, yes, play calling was certainly better. Not a lot better, but better nonetheless. Yep. It was better, and it's been better. I mean, last week it was better. It's not there. I'm not trying to deflect the blame, because there needs to be blame placed on Brian Ferentz. Because listen, let's be honest. The biggest game of the season, and I said it before the game, was the Wisconsin game. And we took a dump during the Wisconsin game offensively. That there's no, you can't excuse that just because this team is playing better now, or or I should say the play calling has been better now. All right. Kevin, Northwestern sucks. Yeah, that's not a good football team. That 17-12 win was ugly. Ugly. Hyperlocal says KF is happy with a great defense, horrible offenses with all the years he has had. He should have had a top 15 to 25 offensive rank. That's not happening. But you're right. I mean, if you can get that, then you're looking at a team that's competing every year for a West championship because their defense is elite every single year. The last year where I can remember Iowa's defense not being great was like 12 to 13, and even in 13, they weren't bad. They figured things out. I believe it might have even been 14 when they had issues at linebacker. And I'm trying to think of the group of linebackers. Reggie Spearman was one of them. And I can't think of the other linebackers in 14, but that was not a great unit. As I recall, they had a lot of issues with UNI, Northern Iowa, that year, which has happened before, we understand. But for the most part, this defense is elite every single year, and the offense just has a problem keeping up. I understand the frustration with people nitpicking, David. We did win the game, and we're on a 3-game winning streak, right? So that you're absolutely right. You got to look at the positives here. Hyperlocal says Kirk holding back Brian has been a rumor for 5 years. I don't think it's true. I don't know if it's true or not. All I know is that someone has to take responsibility. And as the fan base, I guess you don't really know. We don't know. I don't have any inside information about, who's doing what, how much freedom Brian Ferentz has, but he is the offensive coordinator. So, you've got to place some blame there, but a lot of blame has to go to the head coach of the football team. If your offense isn't making improvement, then either you have to make a change with an offensive coach, or you need to be changed, right? I mean, that's how I would see it. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
James.
Hey, James, how are you?
I'm good. First off, why do we think Tyrone Tracy didn't? I don't think he touched the field at all.
I don't know. Did he play? Was he on the field? Did anybody see Tracy on the field?
I didn't hear he was on the field. I was listening to Gary Dolphin and watching the game at the same time because the announcers kind of get annoying. But I didn't hear his name ever on the field, and I saw him on the sideline all the time. But he had a helmet on, so he was in everything. He had everything on.
Yeah, he was there. But listen, remember the issue earlier in the week on Sunday with that tweet, and Kirk kind of downplayed it and said, well, it's just a player who wants to help his team. That's baloney. That was a dumb tweet by Tyrone Tracy, and I think he paid the price today by not seeing the field. And he's getting beat out by better receivers.
I didn't see what he said, so I'm not.
Yeah, he basically sent out a tweet. He sent out a tweet on Sunday that basically said, why would you not use a Swiss Army knife? Referring to himself as being a Swiss Army knife, which is just ridiculous because Tracy, of all the receivers on this team, he might be the most limited. He's not a Swiss Army knife. That's a ridiculous comment to make.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know he said that, but still, I just feel like he could bring something. And with all the drops, I get he said that, but with all the drops, it might have been smarter to maybe try to just give him at least his chance. Maybe not playing the first half, but once they started dropping stuff, you could have went to it and see what would have happened.
That's true. I don't know what was going on with Tracy, if there was an injury or if it was just simply, disciplinary. I don't know. That's a good question. I'd be anxious to hear once we're off. I'll go back and listen to Kirk post game, and we'll see if somebody should have asked that question. I sure hope that somebody in the Iowa media would ask that question. As I'm talking to you, James, a deep run for Nebraska. We do have a flag, but Nebraska into the red zone. We'll see what the flag is here. I believe it's going to be a hold, and it'll come back. So sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead with whatever you were.
You're good. I know I call every week, and it gets annoying sometimes. But Jack Campbell is somebody I want to talk about. I'm from Waterloo, and that's 15 minutes away from Cedar Falls. So I watched him growing up as a kid, and just the person he's turned into and the player he's turned into was something I never could have imagined watching him play.
He's
like a freshman and a sophomore. I could have never imagined him being what he is for Iowa. And it's kind of cool for me because I count Cedar Falls as part of me. We're considered the Cedar Valley, so seeing somebody from my hometown play for my favorite team is kind of big for me.
Absolutely, I understand that, and no, he's been huge, as has Seth Benson. Those small town kids have been absolutely massive, and I believe Seth Benson's from South Dakota, but a couple of kids who weren't real highly recruited, and they're playing great.
I thought he's from. My bad. I thought he was from Council Bluffs. But maybe I'm wrong. I might be.
You could be right. Sure. Maybe I could be wrong on that. I was thinking he was South Dakota.
But another thing I have to say is I was at the state championship game was happening the other day, and I've been looking at Xavier Noenko. I hope he chooses Iowa because I think he could be a big piece if Kerner leaves, and like you can have him slide in with like DeJean and Schulte as like the safety group. I think the safety group could be good if no one chooses to switch.
Are you talking about
I've heard a lot of
Xavier
rumors.
Wampa?
Yeah. I've heard
Yeah.
a lot of rumors that he probably chooses Iowa, because if you look at his you look at Ohio State and Notre Dame. No offense to Iowa, I love Iowa, always will, but one of those teams don't fit. And usually, you have a choice of one team that doesn't fit and two teams that fit. You're usually going to choose the one team that doesn't fit, because why would they be on there?
Right. Well, I think there's a better chance that Iowa gets Xavier Wampa as opposed to, and hold on a second, James, as I'm saying this, a 4th and 1 conversion for Nebraska down inside the 10. It was a 4th and 1 scramble. Adrian Martinez flushed out of the pocket, threw a Hail Mary down the field and got his tight end. So Nebraska has 1st and goal inside the 10, down 7 here in the 4th quarter. But no, back to Southeast Polk. I think Iowa has a better chance at landing Wampa than I think they have of landing a guy like Jaden Proctor.
Did you see Nwanka's tweet about Caden Proctor?
I didn't.
He said wherever I go, my brother's gonna follow me.
That may just be jesting. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I'd read too much into that. But I don't know what right now Wampa he's a class of 22 kid, but Proctor is 23. Am I
23.
correct?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't even know how long it will be. I know Wampa is supposed to be making his decision here soon, right? Didn't he say early December?
I think it's December 4th or 5th, somewhere in that range, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes Ohio State. I'd be a little surprised if he goes Notre Dame, but wouldn't be shocked if he goes Ohio State. But man, yeah, it'd be huge if Iowa could grab him, because they're going to be losing some pieces there. Meriwether and Kerner are now. I mean, they're going to be Kerner. If I'm not mistaken, Kerner has 1 year, and I believe Meriwether has 1 year, not counting COVID.
The guy said everybody has another year except for Van Valkenburg and
right.
I think Hankins, because Hankins used his other. Nebraska just scored, by the way.
Yep, Nebraska thank you, James. Nebraska did just score, so an extra point away from a tie. So hold the phones there, folks. This game is far from over. 6:27 to go. Let's update that score, but appreciate that update, James. But no, you're right.
One more thing, I'm not going to take up time.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to look to the future, obviously, but like, do you think recruiting at the quarterback position has been something changed to the fact that he doesn't really open up the playbook? So like, he's still old fashioned. So do you think us not even quarterback, just recruiting wise in general, other than offensive line and tight end, has really hurt because of the way Kirk Ferentz?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I give so much credit to Kelton Copeland, because what he's done as Iowa's wide receiver coach has been, I think, unbelievable. I mean, look at the talent that Kelton Copeland has gotten to come here since he's been on staff. I mean, Iowa was in an abysmal state prior to Kelton Copeland being hired on, and since he's come on, they've landed Brandon Smith, Amir Smith-Marset, Nico Reganey, Charlie Jones transferred here. They've got Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce. You could argue that one of their deepest positions on offense is wide receiver, and I give tons of credit to Copeland there, because before he was here, it was terrible. But I think the same principle can be applied to quarterback. I agree with you. I don't think, why would you want to come here if you're a quarterback? Like, what would be the appeal?
You're going to hand the ball off.
Yeah, and even when you throw the football, like I said earlier, I think this offense limits you, and certainly they have some talent in that room, but a lot of that talent is really green, like Deuce Hogan. Carson May will be here next year. Carson May's not a mobile guy. Mm-hmm. I would personally like to see Iowa recruit more mobile quarterbacks, because you can make up for, deficiencies at other places like offensive line, which they have this year. And so, I don't know if they'll do that. They certainly haven't shown the willingness to do that. Carson May is not a mobile guy. He's 6'5". He's a Spencer Petras-esque quarterback.
Yeah, I was going to say he reminds me of Petras.
Yeah.
A lot. And I think Deuce kind of does too. Deuce has a little bit more, from what I've seen from his high school film and just stuff. He has a little bit more fleet of foot, but he's still more of a throwing kind of guy. But
let's be honest, the most successful QBs under Kirk have been the mobile guys. CJ Beathard, Drew Tate, Brad Banks. Now, Ricky Stanzi was extremely successful, but let's also remember Ricky Stanzi had maybe the two best receivers under Ferentz and McNutt and DJK. So, and he had a couple of really good tight ends as well. So I think having a mobile quarterback in 2021 is almost essential. And if you don't have a line that can protect, your offense is basically dead on arrival. And that's what it was through 3/4 of the season. It's not much better now, but it is. They scored 33 points today. And I think if you have Petrus back there, I know that Padilla only had 83 passing yards today, but just that threat of his mobility allows them to be able to run the football better and not take sacks, not get behind the chains. And that's all essential to winning at Iowa.
Yeah. And Charlie Jones is a big factor on that. I think the kickoff return changed the whole momentum. Like, I think Illinois was like, dang, we're playing really well. We have him. And then Charlie just went 100 yards. And I feel like that kind of helped the defense as well, kind of be like, they're playing for us now. And I feel like the defense needs that sometimes, but the offense doesn't help them figure out that they're trying to play for them to help them win. So Charlie doing that, I think, kind of helped the defense. Like, let's get our stuff back to going.
Yeah, that 100-yard return was huge. That was the play that turned this game. Absolutely.
But all right, I'll talk to you later. Sorry, I'm taking up people's time. Probably I just wanted to.
That's all right.
What your thoughts were on Tyrone and the recruiting class, but I never rooted for Nebraska more in my life than tonight. But
absolutely,
I ever root for Nebraska in my life.
We got 6 minutes to go. We got a tie game. Thanks for the call, James, and we'll be back on tomorrow with Don.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care. All right. So, if you've not been with us, let me get the number up here. We're using a different line this evening because we're having some problems with the Voice of College Football caller line. By the way, Michigan is destroying Maryland, 59-18. Michigan looks good heading into Ohio State. And I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but they look good. Call us if you want to give us a call. 515-635-1601 is the call line tonight. Tomorrow night, we will have Coach Don Patterson on with us at 7 p.m. Central Time. 7 p.m. Central Time for a special edition of Iowa Live with Coach Don Patterson. And we should have our regular call lines back. Again, not sure what the issue here is with our call system, but we're on a different line tonight. One call at a time. So if somebody's on the phone at the time you're calling, please wait until that call is finished, or you will not get answered, unfortunately. Look at the bottom ticker. It's 28-28, Wisconsin and Nebraska in the fourth quarter. 5:55 to go. There is a bit of a delay here because of because we're streaming this, but it is 28-28, and we do have another caller here on a Wisconsin first down run from Allen. We'll take our call here. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
What's going on, Corey? It's Justice calling from Georgia.
Justice from Georgia.
Handle.
Hey there, how are you? What was your What did you say your handle was?
Kevin Paul.
Ah, okay. So your real name is Justice, or your real name is Kevin?
Yeah, the real name is Justice, but I use Kevin Paul as my other alias. That's one of my best friends from high school. So.
Okay, I gotcha. How are you tonight? What would you think Iowa's win?
Well, I was going to tell everybody to turn their volume down because I was going to do a big woo for Iowa because go Hawkeyes, man.
A win's a win. That's a better Illinois team than we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, I was scared, man. Anytime you got Brett Bielema as a coach, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it helped that he had COVID. I mean, I don't wish that on anybody, but it helped that he wasn't there. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100% on that. And I will recall, I said this prior to the game, but we remember Purdue week 1 last year. Jeff Brom was out for that game, and Purdue still won. So it's not a deal breaker, but it certainly couldn't have helped Illinois as far as game management. But I had those guys were ready to play. I mean, you saw the 10-0 start, and part of that was Iowa miscues, but that first drive was impressive from the Illini. I mean, they marched down the field. I know Iowa was down a couple pieces, but Iowa beat a good team, not a great team, but a good Illinois team today.
Right. Yeah. And it did look like they were going to roll, but like per usual, Iowa always lets the opposing team score first, and then we get it handled, I guess. I don't know, or get it figured out. I don't know why that is, but I mean, I guess that's just Bill Parker's way. But
Yep. And
Yeah,
as
I
you're
don't know.
talking here, touchdown Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Don't remind me.
35-28. I hate to tell everybody that. That is frustrating. Listen, Nebraska can't stop Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen looks like a smaller version of Derrick Henry. I mean,
I don't know if anybody can. Yeah, he might. Yeah.
he looks like a small version of Derrick Henry. I've never seen anything like it, and kid's 17 years old. I don't understand how well, I shouldn't say I don't understand. I understand it because Wisconsin's got a reputation of running the football, whereas Iowa does not. But year after year after year, Wisconsin gets just these ridiculous running backs, and they seem to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, Melvin Gordon is probably one of the best in college football history, having that one game where he had like 500 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe that was against
Wisconsin,
Nebraska, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Yeah.
To be honest, so I don't know. I hope Nebraska gets they're due for a good win, so I hope they get it out versus Wisconsin.
Well, they may need
Iowa.
they may need to go for 2 because I don't know how they're not stopping the run at all. I don't know how many yards Allen has, but if they can come back and score, they may need to go for 2 to win because I don't know if they can stop the run.
Yeah. Speaking of the run, I don't know what was with Illinois not running Chase Brown as much. I mean, I felt like that was their best chance of winning against Iowa. I mean, was running Chase Brown, and they couldn't really get that figured out.
Yeah, and remember Chase Brown did get beat up. He got dinged up late in the game, but I agree. He's really their one big offensive threat. So I'm happy they didn't because I don't think. I mean, Iowa showed last week that they have some vulnerabilities against the run. I mean, Wisconsin did whatever they wanted on the ground against Iowa.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I don't really have any points. Like I said earlier in the chat, I'm a couple beers in. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Iowa, big Hawkeye fan. So
I appreciate the call, Justice, and hopefully you'll join us tomorrow night with Coach Don.
No, yeah, I'll be watching.
All right, sir. Go Big Red.
All right, take it easy. Yeah, for now.
Right. Yep, absolutely. All right, take care. All right. And I do see we missed I think we had a caller try to call in while Justice was on the phone. So our call line is open right now. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. If you want to give us a call, is the call line tonight. We should be back to our regular caller line tomorrow, the Voice of College Football line, which allows us to take multiple calls at a time. But for now, we will leave this line up on our screen. And it is, as you see on the bottom ticker, 35-28, Wisconsin leading Nebraska. And I almost feel like that it's not a nail in the coffin. Nebraska will have the ball back here with an opportunity, plenty of time to go. But boy, that is a disappointing transition if you're an Iowa fan or a Nebraska fan. We do have another caller here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Stu?
Hey, Cory. Yeah, Stu. I don't know about you, but I think that the motions and jet sweeps are really, adding something to the offense and probably helping the run game quite a bit. But I was going to ask, do you think there's any reason why Brian wouldn't use that sooner? It's like, in my recollection, it's like the 2019 USC game, right? The bowl game. It was like, that's when you first really saw him using it so much and it worked so well.
Right.
I just can't remember if last year how much he used it. And I know it's a big thing, for college football in general. And it's really, I just don't see, I'm kind of wondering, do you think maybe because of Petrus, if any reason they wouldn't use it with him in at quarterback?
Well, I mean, you can remember that USC game, they had Nate Stanley, who was also a statue at quarterback.
Right.
And it still worked then. So I don't think that would.
You'd almost think they'd use it more, right? Because,
well, the
lack
one thing
of mobility.
one thing that does open up the option play. So you can bring guys in motion and have the threat of your quarterback pulling that ball back out and running himself. Whereas if you have Petrus doing that, certainly there's really no threat there. We did see Padilla, I believe, have a keeper at least once today and ran the ball well. But you're right. You don't have to have a mobile quarterback back there. I do think one thing that we're missing in all of this is how good Arlen Bruce has been as a freshman, and it's taken him some time. And I'm not saying that he wasn't ready earlier in the year, but it's sort of coincided with Padilla starting or taking the starting job here. He's obviously got the chemistry because Padilla was playing with the twos basically all year. And so he's going to have the chemistry with Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce. And so I wonder if maybe the coaching staff is more comfortable now with guys like Arlen, and he's just that good with these sweep plays. But, you heard Brian Ferentz earlier this week talk about how they felt like they had lost their identity after that Wisconsin game, which I kind of chuckled at.
Right.
I don't think
yeah, exactly. I was wondering that too. Does that kind of coincide with that too? And you're just kind of thinking, well, why didn't you start those up sooner? Because like you said with Bruce and anybody else, that you can just hand the ball, and it's a quick way to get your playmakers the ball, which Iowa's offense probably could use more of that.
Yeah,
so
I know
I'm probably like a lot of fans where I'm like, why are you kind of not doing this so much the first 8 games? And
that's
I can't remember how much last year. I thought they put it in quite a bit last year too, but it's like, man, why would you get away from that? It was seeming to help the offense. But
but think about this too, caller. Think about the trick plays we saw in 2017 and 2018. We have seen virtually no ingenuity on special teams. All of those trick plays in 17 and 18 worked. Basically, all of them worked. And since then, we have not seen like any trick plays. We went for one fake punt earlier this year, and that was when they drew up a quarter or a punter pass that went for 3 yards and they needed 9. It was a stupid play call, but they don't do it anymore. They go for something, it works, and then they put it back in the back pocket and they never pull it out again.
Yeah, you just got to stay aggressive, I think. Yeah, stay creative. And this game, I thought Brian might have, I don't know, I could be wrong, but to me, it seemed like this might have been the most creative he was all year. But at the same time, there was definitely some times better plays could have been called. But I like that he was trying to get the playmakers the ball quicker, getting some, more of those jet sweeps and motions and things. And, they tried that reverse with Reganey, the reverse pass. But, they're at least trying to do things. But, man, a lot of lack of execution, though, or at least a lot of drops today that didn't help. But
hey,
at least like that Brian was trying to be creative more, and maybe that could be a sign of things to come for the end of the season. But it's just kind of like, man, should have done more first 8 games. But
the receivers,
I guess it only bit us twice. But man,
the
for doing
receivers,
Wisconsin, it's like
the receivers have some room to grow here because there are a lot of drops, and it's not just the receivers; it's also the tight ends. There have been a lot of drops, especially since Alex Padilla has taken over as quarterback.
Yeah, I saw that BIB messaged, asking, is he putting too much heat on the ball? And to me, you should catch it unless it's those quick crossing routes. Padilla definitely could, he could use a little touch on those. He needs to, let off the gas on those. But, anything else, to me, if it's in your hands, it's pretty much your responsibility as a receiver or, tight end.
I agree. Yeah, but you're right.
Today, a lot of those quick over the middle ones were dropped, and I think he was putting a little too much sauce on them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect that I'd expect that from Petrus because remember he's had that issue, but Padilla.
Yeah.
I don't know. Padilla, he's got a good arm as well. He doesn't want to fall into the Petrus mold of rifling every ball in there, but his receivers also got to catch the ball. I mean, there have just been some bad drops from every single receiver on this depth chart.
Yeah, and it's funny, like you say that, like Padilla does have good arm strength, and it's almost like I felt like you would hear he didn't, like that was a knock on him, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, but it was almost like maybe the coaches or fans kind of hinted at like, oh, he doesn't have as strong of an arm as Petrus or like, past quarterbacks like, Stanley or somebody. But man, to me, he's got just as much zip on it. And
right
now you're almost like, yeah, let off a bit, buddy.
Yeah, you're
like,
right.
It's like,
he's got a good arm. He's got a really good arm. We really didn't get any balls down the field today. And that might've been Illinois. I can't see what's going on down the field when you're watching the TV stream, but I'll be anxious to hear from Don what he saw, because I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois just really I mean, they obviously schemed against what they saw last week. Iowa got the ball down against Minnesota a lot, and you expect Brett Bielema to make the right calls. He knows he knows how to coach against Iowa, and so hopefully Iowa returns next week with some more adjustments because Nebraska is going to be trying to take away the same thing because Iowa had success against Minnesota doing that.
Yeah. And I was going to say one more thing. I don't want to stay on the phone too long, take up other people's calls, but you almost would think with the absence of a head coach, it'd have more advantage for the opposing team, like Iowa today without Brett. But at the same time, you look back, was it, for the first game last year, right? Braum was out with COVID, and obviously that didn't hurt Purdue winning, 24-20. And so, I guess I didn't expect it to be an advantage just because looking back at that recent history, but you kind of expect it to help a little more to the opposing team. It's like you're missing your head coach, but it'd be different if the coach is like completely out and he's not at practice or something,
I think it's a lot different in basketball. I think if you were to lose Fran McCaffrey in hoops, that would be a bigger blow because you got all these position coaches that are doing most of the work on game day. Even Kirk talked about that during his media availability this week. I think it's a bigger deal in other sports, but football, you can survive.
I think you're right. And I think before the Braum game, I was thinking, and maybe some other fans feel like, oh man, we're just going to kill him because Braum's out. But it's like, well, right, like you said, because I do remember Fran being out some games recently, and that did hurt us. But I guess for football, it doesn't really matter as much because, I guess you have 30 other coaches.
Right.
That doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we assume Brian is making the majority of the play calls. I would be anxious to see if Kirk did have to sit out a game, if the play calling would be any different, because then that would at least give us an idea. Is Kirk micromanaging the offensive play calling, which I don't think he probably is, but I'd be anxious to see if we noticed a difference with play calling.
Yeah, that is a good question. That would be interesting to see. Yeah. Well, I'll hang up and listen, and great show, Corey. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it, sir. And do want to give everybody an update here. It's 35-28, 17 seconds left, third down and 20. Nebraska around, the 25, 30-yard line. So they've got two more chances to score here. And I wonder if they would go for two. I know it's a strong, stout Wisconsin defense, but I wonder if they would go for two if they're able to get in the end zone. But again, they got a long ways to go here, at least 25 yards to the end zone. 17 seconds left, 2 downs remaining, and Nebraska down to 2 timeouts. So they can get a first down before the end zone. But again, we shall see if they're even able to do that. We've got a timeout now on the field. Do want to let everybody know a special edition of Iowa Live will be held tomorrow. We'll call it Iowa Live with Coach Don Patterson. You might be a second ahead of me here, so if you are following the Nebraska game, perhaps this play has already happened, but it is 3rd and 20, so we'll give you a bit of a play-by-play here. All right, 3rd down and 20, 17 seconds left. The Huskers at the Wisconsin 21. Martinez drops back. He's going to take a shot down the field. Nearly picked off, incomplete. 12 seconds left. So they've got 4th down. This is it, folks. 4th and 20, 12 seconds left, and it's not looking good. And no surprise that Nebraska's played this game close. Yes, we are approaching 1,000 subscribers, but anybody who has not subscribed, please do that. Even if you're not an Iowa fan, you can unsubscribe later. But as Mark Rogers has talked about, it really helps our channel. If you can get us to 1,000 subs, it helps us in the algorithm. It helps us be able to support what we're doing here, trying to bring you great content. Right now, we brought all this content to you basically for free, and we're going to continue to bring it to you for free. But until we get to 1,000 subscribers, we're really not able to support what we're doing, if that makes sense. So we ask that you please help us. And again, it helps us on so many different counts. Please help us get to 1,000 subscribers. Final play of the game, perhaps here, or at least final offensive play of the game for Nebraska. 4th and 20 with 12 seconds remaining. It's 35-28 Nebraska. And Nebraska's at the Wisconsin 21. Martinez in the shotgun. He drops back, waiting. He's going to throw, and it is incomplete. No flags. Game over, folks. That was actually a pretty good throw from Adrian, but it's for naught. So Wisconsin's going to get out of here with a win and another bone-crushing defeat for Scott Frost, which I don't like Scott Frost. I don't know many Iowa fans that do. And let's look at this again. Boy, that could have been called pass interference. If that ball had been out in front a little bit further, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Could have easily been pass interference, would have put the ball, what would that have put the ball? About the 6-yard line, first and goal with about, 4 seconds left. So they would have had one shot, but they would have had the one shot. And now we got a flag on Nebraska for unsportsmanlike conduct. Well, there you go, folks. We're down to hoping that Minnesota can beat Nebraska next week. Agree with James here. How is that not PI? That definitely was PI. Scott Frost has enough. I mean, Scott Frost should be losing his mind. I mean, who cares at this point? You lost the game. And he was staying pretty calm immediately after that play. But no, that was absolutely pass interference. It was early. And as much as I don't want to say hate is such a strong word. I don't hate any team. I strongly dislike Iowa State. Well, I have a soft spot for Iowa State. I've admitted that before. I don't hate Iowa State. I get really annoyed with Iowa State because you got this little brother, mindset and attitude. But I cannot stand Wisconsin. And I can't stand with Nebraska, but man, I think I dislike Wisconsin more. Final score. Let's update our banner here. Wisconsin 35, Nebraska 28. So that's the final score, and which means Iowa is reliant now on the Gophers next week to take down Wisconsin. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't. I think Nebraska had a better chance at winning today. The good news is Iowa fans have reason to stay attentive through next week as far as a championship, because I mean, at least there's a chance heading into the final week of the season, week 13. As disappointing as it is, let's be honest, there's no reason why Iowa shouldn't have. Iowa should never have been in this position where you're relying on Wisconsin to lose. I mean, Iowa was 6-0. Wisconsin was not. I mean, we weren't even talking about Wisconsin. And once again, they've proven why they are the best program in the Western Division of the Big Ten. All right. We'll bring this up here in a few minutes as well. We're going to stick around here for a few minutes longer. We will have a special edition of Iowa Live with Coach Don Patterson tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Time, right here, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Special edition of Iowa Live with Coach Don Patterson tomorrow, 7 o'clock Central Time. Did I say Eastern? 7 o'clock Central Time here at Iowa at the Voice of College Football. So please come back tomorrow. We'll have our caller lines open, and hopefully we'll get the call lines working so that we're not having to use the single line system. If you want to call us right now and sound off on either, we can talk about Nebraska, Wisconsin. I'd much rather talk about Iowa's win. 515-635-1601. The man here says, I thought you live in Ames. I do live in Ames. That's why I've got I want to say a soft spot. That maybe is the wrong term. But I do live in Ames. My thing is, I have a hard time building up animosity for Iowa State because I do feel bad for Iowa State. This team's a 6-5 team. Iowa State is 6-5. They are on the verge of going 6-6, man. That is insane. That is crazy. And I maybe I'm overhyping that because I live here and I understand the hype around that program. But dear Lord, that's crazy. All right. Kevin Downey, 440 yards, 7 yards per play versus Wisconsin. That's what they do, but they can't close games out. They just cannot close games out. I understand the pain there, Justice. I do. Skylar says, I think Iowa will struggle against Nebraska on Friday. Of course they will. Of course they will. I will be absolutely floored if Iowa runs through Nebraska. In fact, I'll say this. I think there's a better chance Nebraska wins by double digits than Iowa. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to pick that to happen, but Nebraska has so much more firepower, specifically play calling. And as much as I don't like Scott Frost, they do have some unique play calling as part of that offense. And they don't have a great wide receiving core, but they've got good backs. Adrian Martinez is an athlete, might be the best quarterback in the West. There's so much upside on that roster, and that's why I don't think Frost survives, because he has found a way to lose. And I say he because it's been a pattern. It's not like his guys haven't executed here and there. It's been a pattern of behavior. They have found a way to lose game after game after game, and they play this one close, and they find a way to lose again. Now, they may come back and beat Iowa next week. It is at Lincoln, and man, you know that crowd's going to be rocking. It's going to it will be. It'll be a Super Bowl for them. They have no postseason. This will be their postseason. They'll have the spotlight, national TV on Black Friday. They'll have an opportunity to win. Now, it won't matter. I mean, if Iowa loses, it won't matter if Wisconsin wins. Now, Wisconsin doesn't play till Saturday, I believe, but it won't matter. This is a good stat from our user here. Frost is 0-13 against ranked opponents, and he's played a lot of them close. Think about the Ohio State game this year. Think about the Nebraska game this year. Think about this Wisconsin game. He'll get a chance to move to 1-13 next Friday against Iowa, because Iowa will be ranked heading into that game. If I were coaching against Nebraska, I would never get more than one score ahead. Well, I don't know how much have they had the lead many games this year? I don't know that they have. Like, they stick close to everybody, but can never get over the hump. It's amazing with how well Ohio State is playing right now. They were right there. They were right there against Ohio State in that game. It's unreal. Kevin Downey does bring up Clarissa Chun. I think it's pronounced Chun, named Iowa women's wrestling coach. That did happen earlier this week. Circle Hawk says, I only have just under 700 followers on Twitter, but I shared the link and said sub. That is greatly appreciated, Circle Hawk. I think I said Circle Hawk, didn't I? Circle Hawk, appreciate that. Thank you so much. And for anybody else, we'd be so happy if you could do the same thing. Share our link out on social media, share our show, encourage everybody to subscribe. It would help us immensely get to 1,000 and be able to continue to produce these shows. Again, appreciate that very much from Circle Herc, helping us get to 1,000 subscribers and hopefully well past that. But 1,000 is the goal right now. All right. Let's run through some stats from today's game. We haven't really talked a whole lot about the statistics. We did talk about Alex Padilla, 6 of 17, 83 yards with a pick. So not a great performance from Alex. It didn't feel like a bad performance. I was honestly surprised when I looked at the stat sheet late in the game and I saw he had 83 yards. I thought, good Lord, that's a bit concerning against Illinois. But Illinois's got a good defense. And they obviously took away the deep ball. The kickoff return from Charlie Jones was massive, 100 yards for the touchdown. Remember, Iowa was down 10-0 when that kickoff return for a touchdown occurred. And it's interesting, right before that kickoff, I kind of said under my breath, they need to start catching fair catches here back here. I mean, they hadn't been getting past the 20. Like, they haven't really gotten a whole lot on kickoff returns for several games now. And I'm almost surprised they didn't start fair catching the ball. We heard Kirk Ferentz earlier this week talk about how this was a game where Illinois traditionally forces a lot of touchbacks, and you're not going to be able to get many returns against them. And right after Charlie Jones returned a kick to maybe the 22-yard line, where, again, I'm thinking would have been better off fair catching it, he goes across the field, finds open space, and it manages to scamper his way for a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, which I believe shifted the entire game and was the biggest play of the game. Quinn Schulte's play in the fourth was huge, too. It was fourth down and, 1 or 2, if I'm not mistaken. I think it may have been 4th and 3. But it was not a ton of yardage, and Quinn Schulte knocks the ball out late. I believe it was a tight end for Illinois. That was huge. Tyler Goodson did have a good day from a statistics standpoint, 27 carries for 132 yards. That is impressive. That's an impressive number from Tyler, who, again, has struggled. And we've got another call here. I don't believe this is our caller line. Hello, thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with the Voice of College Football. Hi, who's this? Scott, can I get you to try to call us again?
I sure can.
Give us a call back right away. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no worries. I'm calling.
All right. For some reason, Scott came in on my phone. I've never had that happen before. That was very odd. So, Scott, if you're listening, hopefully he could hear me. Sounded like he could hear me. Call us 515-635-1601. All right. That was weird. All right, Scott, I apologize for that. I'll tell you, this is weird. That call came in on my phone, and it did not come in on my computer. So I apologize for that, but I appreciate you giving us a call back.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
What'd you think of the game today?
I got to see part of the game, and the defense doing their usual thing. But I just had a question, kind of going back to the quarterback issue. Have we heard anything about Petrus and if he's got that upper torso injury, or is he just out because today is playing better than he is?
No, he's good to go. He was deemed healthy heading into this game. He was the backup.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's the quarterback competition.
For now.
So I also wanted to, right.
Yeah.
Also just wanted to point out, I hear, down south, Big Ten doesn't get a whole lot of love, but you hear a lot of people complaining about Iowa. I think the thing people are forgetting is they're 9-2, and
yeah, you're right.
Regardless, they've got a hell of a season going, and like you said earlier, I'm not really sure. So
well, I'll say this, caller. I get annoyed with the people that don't appreciate winning seasons and seasons that do go for 9 or 10 wins. But are you at all? Because I understand the fan that also says, okay, yeah, it's great to win 9 or 10 games, but if we're not winning the West title, what's the point? I understand that mindset because people get tired of going to the Outback Bowl. They get tired of going to these bowl games out in Southern California, and maybe that's an elitist thinking as far as the sporting world is concerned. But I understand that line of thinking. I kind of get not disinterested, but my interest level goes way down once they're eliminated from the West conversation, because it shouldn't be this difficult to get to the Big Ten title game. I mean, we haven't done it but once since the divisions were formed. Or do you agree with that, or are you kind of a
I absolutely do. It's I've been watching Iowa the first football game I watched was Hayden Fry's first game at Iowa. And so I've been watching them for a long time. So, no, I completely agree. I would like to see Iowa, one, do a few things to just light that offense up, get them going. And I think with a mobile quarterback, we can do that. But bowl games, yeah. I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of that game, I guess. But, you know, a bowl game's a bowl game, and I understand the coaches and bonuses, but Hawkeye fans would like to see a Big Ten West title. And, you know, that Wisconsin game, that one just made you want to throw up with how bad they performed on that. But, you know, being down here, I don't get to see a lot of it, so I get to hear it. And I just love watching your show on YouTube and so forth, because I think, great commentary. And I can't wait for Patterson. I just love that guy. I've been watching him for a long time. So
he's great.
But yeah, I love your show. Appreciate y'all. And you said Don's going to be on tomorrow. Is that right?
Yep, 7 p.m. Central tomorrow. We'll have a special edition of Iowa Live. So, yep, and we'll be taking your calls again.
You bet. I will call back. Thank you much.
All right,
I appreciate you, Cory.
Take care as always. Have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
You bet.
All right. Always appreciate our callers here, and a lot of callers from out of state. Hawkeye fans all over the country. We've even had Hawkeye callers from outside the country, so we appreciate our calls. And again, we're running with a different phone number this evening, different line. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. What did I say? 1601. I gotta look at my screen around and forget this number. We're adjusting on the fly because we had some technical issues with our call-in studio software. I'll have to reach out to Mark about that. That's his system, his baby. Not blaming him, but he would know better than I would as far as what's wrong on that frame. I will say this. James Hemmer asked this question. Desmond Hudson going to the portal. What are my thoughts on it? It's not surprising. It's a little bit disappointing because Desmond Hudson was a guy that I hoped would emerge given his size. I think he's like, 6'2", 6'3". He's the one real tall receiver on this roster. I could have seen him replacing Brandon Smith, but it just never materialized. I feel bad for Desmond, but him transferring is no surprise, especially when you have guys like Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce emerging. Charlie Jones, I'm hearing more and more rumblings that he may come back for an extra year. That would not shock me at all. My guess is if you had to put a gun to my head now, my guess would be that Charlie Jones does come back for another year. I'd probably put him at the top of my list. Again, I can't read these kids' minds, but that would be my guess. So Desmond Hudson leaving, it's disappointing because of his size and his athleticism. I thought he was a good prospect. I believe he was out of Kansas City when they recruited him, if I'm not mistaken. So disappointing, but again, the transfer portal, it's part of college football now, and you got to live with it, especially when you've got 5 or 6 guys ahead of you on the depth chart. You can't really blame the kid.
Go ahead.
Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Cory, this is Vincent.
Hey, Vincent. How are you tonight?
Not too bad. Happy with the win, but just wanted to get your take on a couple things, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
First thing was, I'm sure you probably heard me when I've called in and talked about the offensive line woes, and I think today looked a smidge better, not terribly better, but you saw some better running lanes for Tyler and for Gavin. Still had those negative plays where the D line was getting penetration in the backfield, but that was the first thing I was going to ask, just your take on the offensive line and how they did today. And the second thing, which is the most concerning for me, is the lack of pressure or QB pressure from our D line. I seem to kind of notice that more and more each week, a lack of pressure from our front four on our opposing quarterback.
Yeah, I've talked about that in the past, Vincent. If you look back at Iowa's performances, even those performances earlier in the year where we were forcing tons of turnovers, even the Maryland game where you forced like 7, I don't recall, and maybe somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong, I don't recall a game where Iowa was consistently getting the quarterback with just basically a four-man front and without stunt plays. They were basically having to, like all that stunt action against Iowa State, that's what caused all the pressure on Brock Purdy. You could say the same thing about the game against Indiana and Michael Penix. Once teams were able to scout that out and realize what Iowa was doing, they just don't have an A.J. Epinesa, an Anthony Nelson, a Drew Ott. They don't have those guys, Davion Nixon, that can get to the quarterback one-on-one. Van Valkenburg is the best guy they have, but he is probably, like if you put him on a line with Davion Nixon and Epinesa and Nelson, he's by far the fourth guy. And that's no knock on him. Those are great players. We just don't have guys who are beating guys one-on-one right now. Hopefully that changes. I don't know who on the roster is going to evolve into that guy. I had hopes that maybe Y.A. Black could turn into that guy on the inside, but I don't think he's developed quite like the staff had hoped he would. I know he certainly hasn't from my vantage point, but I'm also I'm no line expert, certainly no offensive line expert. But right now what I'm seeing is just a lot of stunt action. When they do get to the quarterback, it's usually through stunt plays, but you can't run a stunt every single play. And as a result, yeah, you're right. Brandon Peters, even the kid from Northwestern, Tanner Morgan, they had a lot of time in the pocket, and it puts a lot of pressure on Iowa secondary.
Yeah, and that's what I keep noticing is as good as our secondary is, you can only cover so long. And I agree with you. We don't have an AJ. We don't have an Anthony Nelson. I really thought, I like Joe Evans, even though he's smaller in stature. He's not a real
I do too.
Defense, but he's certainly quick. He's a very heady, smart football player. I'm a little disappointed in Wagner, and the only reason I say that is because he came in with a lot of acclaim and fanfare from I think it was Dowling High School.
Yes, Dowling
in Des Moines. Four-star guy recruited by Florida State, Iowa, a lot of your bigger programs. So I really thought he kind of emerged a little bit more so on the defensive line. But
I agree.
Not a lot seen from him. I'm kind of disappointed, and I don't know if it's just that he's bulked up and he's not the pass rusher that he probably was in high school. But nevertheless, I hope we can get some of the defensive line woes sewed up, because if not, we're going to really be putting our defense and our DBs in a harder position if we can't get any pressure on the quarterback.
I agree, and we've tried to send more linebacker. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, and I don't have the numbers to back this up, but I think we've blitzed a lot more than in normal years. That's why I give so much credit to Jack Kerner, to Kayvon Merriweather, and to all the cornerbacks, because there have been times where these corners in this secondary, they've gotten beat. But again, you got to weigh that and realize they've dealt with a lot of injuries. A, B, they haven't had the support of a lot of these linebackers because they've been coming in on blitzes a lot more. And the defensive line just doesn't get home as much as we'd like. So the quarterbacks have more time to scope out the field. And I agree. I'm disappointed. I know Wagner has dealt with some injuries. It'd be nice. I thought he would kind of emerge outside. And I know they kind of run him both on the inside and on the outside. But between him and Y.A. Black, a little bit disappointed. Maybe one of those guys can make a jump. Dante Craig's another guy that you hope maybe can make a big jump heading into next year. But physically, I don't see a lot of guys on this roster who are just like Epinesa or Nixon or even Nelson, who is just a really big guy. They just don't have those guys on the roster, and that's a bit concerning to me. Now, they could go the transfer portal route. They could grab somebody. They did that with Van Valkenburg. But they did it with Jack Heflin from Northern Illinois. So it's possible they could do that. But this is the first year in a while where Iowa hasn't had an elite defensive lineman. Another guy we haven't been talking about, Chauncey Goldstein. He wasn't a highly touted kid, but he was a big body, and he ended up being a pretty darn good one-on-one pass rusher, and he was really good against the run. So, it's disappointing. You hope they can make some development, and certainly bowl prep will help that. We always hear every year, Kirk talks about bowl prep and how important it is for young guys.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. Oh, and then I wanted to get your take on how you thought the O-line did today.
Oh yeah, the O-line. I like I said earlier, I'm not going to claim to be an O-line expert. That would be a better question for Don. I do see it was frustrating at one point in this game. I saw a 15-yard inside run for Goodson, and then they try to run outside zone and they lose 4 yards. I don't get the inconsistency, but I've been saying this not only for weeks, I've been saying it for years, and it makes no sense. I do think Gavin Williams is the better number 2 running back. Even if Ivory Kelly-Martin were protecting the football, having Gavin Williams as sort of that bull who can lower his shoulders, to me, helps immensely, because Kelly-Martin and Goodson, to me, are very similar runners. And I just like what I'm seeing from Gavin Williams. I think they're good at running back. I don't know if Tyler Goodson will come back next year. I think he should. That's my opinion. I think he should. And so him and Gavin Williams does excite. Those two guys excite me as 1 and 2 next year. But the line seemed to play better today, but there were still times where there was unnecessary pressure way too quickly on Padilla, and the running lanes closed. But I also understand the other side of things. I hear from fans every week now. Tyler Goodson seems to dance in the backfield, and I have noticed that he gets a little bit foot happy, and I wish that he'd be a little bit more decisive, and that's part of the reason why I like Gavin so much.
Yeah, Gavin's he's certainly your bruiser type compared to Goodson. I do notice that Goodson does a little bit of dancing, but he's also dancing because he's got interior D linemen
You're right.
usually already in the backfield before he gets a chance to find a running lane. But I agree with you. I like Gavin coming out of high school. Another Des Moines area kid. He's a tough runner so far. As much as I respect every Iowa player, I was glad to see Ivory Martin kind of take a back seat to Gavin, because I just couldn't take the fumbles anymore. And I didn't know what, I've coached myself. It's one of those things that you can either correct or you can't. But I think Gavin's done a pretty darn good job so far with his, spot duty. The other thing I wanted to real quick say, and I'm sure you might have a difference of opinion or some other callers, as much slack as Petrus gets for being, kind of a stiff in the pocket, so to speak, I can see why. I've heard other callers say, well, if they had this much confidence in Padilla, why wasn't he starting at the beginning of the year? And today kind of showed me some of those weaknesses that Padilla has versus Petrus, and vice versa. Padilla is obviously far more mobile in the pocket. He's great at making decisions or going through his progressions quickly and getting that ball out. But I don't know if you've noticed, a lot of times when his ball comes out, it's not real crisp. It's not a tight spiral, which can make it harder for the receivers to get a grasp on.
Right.
He doesn't have the arm strength that a Petrus does. So I can, after watching today's game and kind of self-analyzing myself at home, I'm thinking to myself, I can see now why Petrus would have gotten the nod ahead of Padilla, just solely based on arm strength.
So, Vincent, in your opinion, though, and I'll give my opinion after, but in your opinion, who should be the starting quarterback against Nebraska?
Oh, absolutely Padilla. And that Nebraska game, I just heard you, scares me to death, because when you can go up to Wisconsin and put up 28 points, and just like you said, their firepower scares the bejesus out of me right now, because I know we're going to have trouble with Nebraska, and I agree with you, actually. I could, unfortunately, see us losing by double digits. I think that they're that talented offensively.
Yeah, it's possible. I wouldn't put my money on that either, though, because I don't know that these guys know how to close. But, I know they don't know how to close. They haven't closed. Their best win, isn't their best win against, Fordham? Isn't that their best win right now?
Nebraska?
Buffalo.
I'd have to look at I'd have to look and see. But, man, when you play Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan that close, and I'm on the same page as you. They're not closing games out. But for us, when we struggle as much as we do offensively, and we're not an explosive offense, and on the defensive side, we can't create pressure on the quarterback, which might play to our favor with Martinez. If we're not creating pressure, it means if he escapes the pocket, we'll at least be within, arm's reach to try to bring him down. But it makes me extremely nervous for the game coming up, that it might be really bad for us.
Yeah, we're not a great tackling defense. As good as this defense is on a lot of counts, this is not a very good tackling defense. We've proven that time and time again over the past few weeks.
Yeah, the last couple weeks it's been you're watching us, as we're playing. We're like, guys, come on, this is fundamental stuff. But I get it. You're 11 games into the season. I mean, you're gonna there'll be some slippage, but I'm certainly looking forward to Friday's game. I hope it's a good outcome. I certainly hope Minnesota is able to help us out. Although I agree with you there again, I'm not counting on. Love your show, because I swear, like when I listen to you talk and you'll kind of go off in your areas that are concerning to you, I'm like, that's just how I think. So I'm watching your show every Saturday night.
I appreciate that.
Anyway,
I appreciate that.
I certainly agree with you on a lot of points. I won't keep you, Cory. You let me take up a lot of your time. I'm going to go back and listen to some more of your show here a little bit later. But great talking to you. And you said tomorrow there's a special, right? We can call in again with Don.
Yep,
okay.
Tomorrow at 7, we'll be on with Don Patterson.
Well, sir, I greatly appreciate the time, Cory.
All right, Vincent, take care. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Have a good night.
You too. All right. Appreciate that call from Vincent. As always, Yakov22 asks, on average, how many Iowa high school players are worthy of an Iowa or Big Ten scholarship per year? I don't have the answer to that, Yakov22. I do feel it's gotten better. It's gotten better in both basketball and football. I think of recent basketball recruits being DJ Carton, Peyton Sandfort, obviously Peter Jock, Harrison Barnes, Doug McDermott. Devin Hilson's a kid in football who got a scholarship this year from Des Moines Hoover, I believe. Tyler Kluver, Marshalltown kid who was a year ahead of me in school. He obviously was an in-state. I mean, you can go. I'm just scratching the surface of football, but I think my point is in both sports there have been more and more and more and more and more guys who are getting Division I offers. We mentioned John Wagoner being a kid who's certainly maybe not progressed the way we'd hoped he would. Tyler Linderbaum, Tristan Wirfs, you can go on and on and on. Quarterback isn't a position where the state of Iowa does very well at the high school level. I'm trying to think of the last quarterback, maybe Drew Cook. Am I missing somebody? Drew Cook was probably the last quarterback that Iowa recruited in state, or at least got. I could be wrong on that, but there are a lot of good. I mean, Iowa does pretty good for being Iowa. We do pretty good here with in-state recruiting. I'm talking about the program, University of Iowa, Kirk Ferentz and that program. They do a good job recruiting kids in state, and there is a good pool of kids in the state of Iowa, and that's part of the reason why Iowa's had so much success under Kirk. And I think you could attribute some of the recent win totals, even though Iowa's not competing for conference championships, the higher win totals since 2017. You could attribute part of that to in-state recruiting, because a lot of these guys who have been, I don't want to say star players, because they've had guys, Amir Smith-Marset being from Jersey, Akram Wadley being from Jersey, Brandon Smith being from Mississippi, but they've had a lot of guys on the interior of the line. They had a lot of guys in special teams who are Iowa's special teams and defense. Those two units have been carrying Iowa for basically the vast. I'm trying to think the last year where I don't think there's been a year where you could say the offense was a step ahead of the defense. Not under Kirk. And a lot of the reason for that is in-state kids. And Iowa does do a good job of recruiting in-state. Actually, I'll give a shout out to Cale Crow, big tackle that Iowa has coming in next year. He plays at Ballard, which is just about 10 miles south of us here in Ames. So, and he's a kid who's 6'7". You could see him either move to tight end or be competing for playing time at tackle, because tackle's a position that I think you have to say it's an open competition. I know they like Richmond, they like DeYoung, and Plum is filled in, but man, that's got to be an open competition with all the guys right now, with Richmond, with DeYoung, with Plum, with Cale Crow, with David Davidkov. If they're comfortable at guard, maybe you give Colby his shot. I don't know if he's more of a natural guard, but to me, tackle has to be one of the biggest positions of development over this coming off season. Andrew brings up Charlie Jones. He was absolutely huge today, and man, what a tough guy. Got banged up a couple times in this game. Comes right back in, continues to return punts, and he certainly had great ball security, which you have to have in this situation. Underway shift colors. Listen, the kind of thinking by Iowa fans that 10-2 or 9-3 is total crap. I don't know. He says, "Get out of here with that loser attitude. I cannot stand for the crap this fan group puts up with." I understand. I mean, you got to realize, underway shift colors, that there are worse things than being 9-2 or 9-3 and 10-2. Illinois would love to be 9-3. Nebraska would love to be 9-3. Purdue would love year in and year out being 9-3, 10-2. Even Minnesota. Iowa has been in the top 3 of this division basically every year. The problem is they can't get through that glass ceiling, or at least we thought it was a glass ceiling. They just can't get through it, and that's what's the frustration. I understand your frustration, and I agree. To me, you can't be satisfied. You can never be satisfied, right? Even the coaches will say you can never be satisfied, because if you're satisfied, you're never going to achieve great things. And this offense doesn't achieve great things hardly ever, and this team does achieve great things once in a while. I think of 2015. They won the West, came this close to the playoff. 2009, they win the Orange Bowl. Those are great things. Those are great things. The problem is that they're few and far between. And for as good as this coaching staff and the strength and training staff have done over the years with 2- and 3-star kids, you'd hope at some point you'd hope they could win more West titles than one in, what has it been, like 8 years, 9 years? And that's frustrating. And you're losing out to a team in Wisconsin every year that basically plays your brand of football but just does it better. And that's frustrating. If you're not pissed by how this team should have finished, then embarrassed what I have. Okay. Yeah, I understand. I understand what he's saying here. And I try to have a pretty good memory. I believe underway shift colors is our caller from Virginia Beach. I could be wrong on that. But I do understand the frustration, especially when you're 6-0. I get it. I remember saying myself, I don't see who's going to catch Iowa. Who's going to catch Iowa in this race? And boy, they caught Iowa, and they caught Iowa fast, because they didn't show up. Iowa didn't show up against the Badgers, and they didn't show up against the Boilermakers. Love the Hawkeyes. I like this attitude from Kevin, though. You got to be balanced. Love the Hawkeyes no matter what. Pizza Hut Bowl, or Orange Bowl. No bowl, I'm still cheering. Well, that's a good attitude to have. Certainly, we don't want the coaches to have that attitude. The man here, I hope Beth Mowins can join your show tomorrow night. So you want Beth Mowins over Don Patterson? Is that what we're saying? We want Beth Mowins over Don Patterson. Let me get the caller line back up. I apologize. Our caller line is open. (515-635-1601). I would love to get Beth Mowins on the show. Maybe I should work on that, but not over Don Patterson, please. All right, John says, not a fan of the play calling, but there are literally 110 other programs who would trade places with Iowa. That's exactly true. Danielle says, I think this is a typo. Let's see. Let's get the right comment. Do you think all the jet sweeps were a slight at Tyrone's comments? That's an interesting point, because I don't think I really don't think. I would like to think that this coaching staff is above calling plays that go against tendency for spite. I would think you would do that because it makes sense to do that. So I would think that they didn't accidentally do something good because they were trying to send a message to Tyrone Tracy. I did think it was interesting that Tracy was there. Like, he didn't play. I don't remember him playing. I'll have to look back, but I don't remember him playing I do find it interesting, though, that they did run so many more sweeps, but you can attribute a lot of that to just Arlen Bruce and Charlie Jones. Those guys have been really, really good in every facet of the game. And let me tell you something else. If Charlie Jones moves on, I could easily see Arlen Bruce becoming Iowa's next punt returner. I don't know if they're running him at punt return much or kick return, but just his abilities, he is sort of a Swiss Army knife, not to take a line from Tyrone Tracy, but I could see them using him in special teams more. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Minnesota Dave.
Minnesota did it. What do you mean? They beat Indiana?
They beat Indiana, and I guess both of us were hoping for that Nebraska win over Wisconsin.
That was the big one. That was the big one.
Yeah, where I had to flip back and forth between that game and this game after I knew that Iowa pretty much was going to win over Illinois.
Yeah, Nebraska played them close, which doesn't surprise me at all. I do think Nebraska had a better shot of beating Wisconsin than Minnesota does, but you never know. Minnesota has proven that they can play with anybody. Recall game 1 against Ohio State. They were neck and neck for almost 3 quarters, and, so you never know.
It should have beaten Iowa in a lot of ways.
You could say that. Absolutely. Yeah, so should Iowa. Yeah, you could also say Northwestern should have beaten Iowa.
No.
Well, it was 17-12. It wasn't a runaway.
But still Northwestern is Northwestern.
Well, they suck, but
if you take a lead against Northwestern, you pretty much won the game.
Yeah. Well, they got through.
I mean, you can have a horrible game. You guys just played horribly against Northwestern and still won the game. But you can look at the Minnesota game and then go, my God, you just made 1 or 2 big plays that you needed to do, and that was it. And then we made one bad call the whole entire game. That game was was going for the long field goal that got easily blocked. And I kept on thinking to myself, like, why? Like, this is the one thing this is the one thing basically as a Minnesota fan, I don't understand PJ is occasionally he outguesses himself.
Is this our, what's your name, caller?
Minnesota Dave.
Dave, what's your handle?
Dave Walensky.
There you go. Okay. All right. I figured that's who you were, Dave. I didn't realize you were a Minnesota fan, but you're right. That field goal was sort of odd. I didn't agree with that either. I thought PJ would have been better to go for that.
Yeah, go for it, or at least pin them deep. And you played well defensively against them, but yeah, that was that's yesterday's news, and now I'm hoping for Nebraska to at least get a win against you guys.
Well,
who knows what could happen?
I guess anything can happen.
Yeah, that's only if we can beat Wisconsin, which historically lately has not been good for the Gophers.
No, you're right. You're right. I that's why I don't have a lot of confidence that Minnesota's going to. Well, they are playing at home. So I would love. I mean, you Minnesota. I know you guys are trying to win your division as well, but man, we would love it to see. Iowa fans would love to see Minnesota beat Wisconsin next week. Man, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to Friday. It's either going to be basically if you guys win, then our the best thing the next best thing for Minnesota is at least win one of the dang trophy games and at least knocking out Wisconsin from playing in the Western Division was, winning the Western Division would be, just a little bit of
listen,
a moral victory.
You'd rather Iowa win the division than Wisconsin, right?
I hate Wisconsin. I hate.
Hey,
I
listen,
hate Iowa, but
yeah.
I rather like see Wisconsin just fall on their face.
I got a question. Why do Minnesota fans hate Iowa fans so much? Because I don't think Iowa fans hate Minnesota fans. My wife and I went to an Iowa-Minnesota basketball game in early 2020, right before things shut down due to COVID. And there were so many. I mean, first of all, the student body chants, "We hate Iowa," which whatever. I don't quite get that because I don't.
It's a lot better than F the Badgers, which they usually say when they play Wisconsin.
Well, well, I just don't understand the animosity there. And we had some fans that were sort of nasty to us, but I'm also kind of loud when I go to an opposing venue, so I understand.
Well, I can say the same thing about Iowa fans on some occasions. You guys are the nicest guys, and you guys come and visit Minnesota. Then when I come over to Iowa City, I got a battery thrown at me one time in the parking lot.
A battery?
Yeah.
What kind of battery?
Like those double D batteries.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like a car battery.
Someone probably just ripped it out of the garage door opener. This was back in 2003 and just threw it at me.
Jeez.
I mean, no particular reason whatsoever. I wasn't starting anything. He just said Minnesota sucks, and he threw a battery at me.
So you're telling me that you were walking by his home, and you weren't saying
no. It was in the parking lot it was in the parking area for tailgating.
Okay.
And this is 2003.
And this guy just randomly looked at you and said, Minnesota sucks, and then he hurled a battery in your direction.
Yeah.
Was he lucid?
He was probably, I would probably say he was 17 at the time.
Oh, okay.
He had been really young.
Young and dumb. I get you.
Young
and
dumb.
I'd like to think Iowa fans are better than that. And I'm sure there's Minnesota fans who are better than that as well. I just don't. I don't have any. I know that the Minnesota, there's a lot of history with the Minnesota-Iowa rivalry. I just have never understood the animosity because I don't feel that from Iowa fans towards Minnesota fans. Like I couldn't care less about Minnesota.
The funny thing is, I look at, it's funny that you say we're talking about animosity. I never thought there would be as much animosity for Iowa fans towards Nebraska fans.
Well, it's because Nebraska fans are annoying. And there's a lot of Nebraska fans. There's more Nebraska fans here in Iowa than there are Minnesota fans. That's a fact.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see that.
And Nebraska fans hold on to their history in the 90s like it's,
Yeah, I totally agree. Believe me. We have a couple of Nebraska fans around here, because it's like the second biggest city in like the Midwest around this area. The Twin Cities. And you get these people that talk about constantly about like the 90s, the Tom Osborne era, and it's it's still around. And then another group of fans I find annoying is Michigan fans. They act the same way.
Yeah,
they live in that Bo Schembecker days, like it still exists.
Well, I think the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry has humbled some Michigan fans in recent years. I can tell you who, if anybody wants to know who's on my, I'm not going to say hate list, but my like the least list. Minnesota's not on that list. Number 1 is Wisconsin. Number 2 is Nebraska. And number 3, and probably a tie for number 2, would be Iowa State. I don't really dislike any programs. I respect teams like Purdue. Like Purdue beats Iowa every year. I respect the crap out of Purdue because they've got a head coach that just knows how to beat Iowa. And either we're too stubborn or just not, I don't know, football savvy enough to scheme against what Jeff Brom does. But like Minnesota, I know everybody doesn't like PJ Fleck.
Another one that you guys have trouble with. I always say this, and I think that everybody kind of have a little bit of trouble with them. But when Northwestern is hot, Pat Fitzgerald's probably one of the best coaches in the Big Ten.
Yeah, you're right.
that.
And I don't like them either, but
like
I have respect for
get.
Pat Fitzgerald.
Oh, I do too. That's like the one thing I think everybody in the conference has total respect for this guy.
Yeah, you're right.
For what he gets, and he's just true to his program, and he gets the kids that he needs to get. And all it takes is maybe 2 or 3 years, and he'll get them right back to, winning the West and playing smart football.
Mark Miller comments, he says, we stole their goalposts back in the day.
Yep. That's another. Oh, my God, I was at that game.
Oh, were you?
I was at that game. That's another thing I think what bothers Minnesota fans were the dome years where we would have a home game and it felt like an away game every time we played Iowa or Wisconsin. And I remember, I think that was like 2002 when they stole the goalpost. When they won the West,
right.
or when they won the Big Ten outright.
That was 02.
Tied, I think. Yeah.
Well, they won it outright in 02. I believe they tied in 04, right? But it's been a long time ago.
Yeah, something like that. It's been years. I mean, yeah, that was always the annoying thing about, the best part about playing now at TCF Bank Stadium is it limits as many Iowa and Wisconsin fans as we basically can get, because the dome always just felt like either it was 50-50 or it was like majority of Iowa or Wisconsin fans.
Yeah.
And most of them, I bet you anything, lived in the cities.
Kevin Downey says Minnesota people are just angry in general. And he says that's why it's a hockey state.
Wouldn't you be angry if you can't beat your rivals?
Yes, I am angry. I am angry. Let's be honest. Iowa. Well, I will say this. I give credit to Iowa because Iowa does beat Minnesota almost every year. They beat Iowa State now almost every year, and they beat, who's the last one I'm missing? Nebraska basically every year. They can't beat Wisconsin. The most important game on the schedule every year is Wisconsin. They can't beat them. I understand your pain. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'm the same way when it comes to Wisconsin. I can't stand the Badgers.
We agree on something.
Can't. Yeah. Like I said, you hear, we hate Iowa until after we play Iowa, and then it turns to F the Badgers.
Yeah, I'm not going to lobby for the vulgarity on either note, but I do know. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of animosity towards both schools, and I don't understand what it's like to be on the other side of things because Minnesota fans are used to getting beat by Iowa almost every year. I mean, Minnesota has beaten Iowa on and off. But has there been a stretch under Kirk where Minnesota has won more than 2 in a row? I don't think there has been. There hasn't. I'm almost 100% sure there hasn't been. I'd have to look back.
Twice, 2010 and 2011.
10 and 11.
Yeah, back when we were just changing, we just got rid of. We fired Brewster in 2010, and it was that interim coach that ended up beating. We ended up having a game against Illinois, beat Illinois in a day off or a week off, a bye week, before we played you. And then we ended up beating you guys at home. And then because of the changing of the schedule and all that, we had to play you guys at home twice, and we won in 2011. And that was the onside kick game that we ended up getting an onside kick. I think we went for an onside kick with 8 minutes to go, and ended up getting that. And then
those were 2 really close wins.
Yeah. And those are the 2 wins I felt that helped the Minnesota program out and get the kids that they needed to do. Because that's the thing I think what PJ needs to do is You have to. If either you lose to Iowa, you have to beat Wisconsin. And if you can't beat Wisconsin, you have to at least beat Iowa. It helps recruiting in our area.
Right.
You know, those are the arch ones. We can talk about, you know, the governor's bell against Penn State, which nobody gave a crap about. You know, I mean, the little brown jug is something that just Michigan just holds up after, you know, every Minnesota and Wisconsin, Minnesota and Michigan game.
Yeah.
You know. But you probably have other callers.
Well, I don't know. We only have one line open, so when you get off, maybe we will. But I always appreciate the conversations and your comments and you listening, and we can both root for Minnesota next week. We have that in common.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, at least if you guys beat Nebraska, you'd definitely be rooting for Minnesota.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't beat, if Iowa doesn't beat Nebraska, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter then.
Yep.
Then I hope you just cheer for us just to make sure that Wisconsin doesn't win the West. Then.
Yeah, I would love it for Minnesota to win either way. Either way, I'd love it for Minnesota to win. So Minnesota, my understanding is Nebraska beats Iowa and Minnesota beats Wisconsin and Minnesota wins. Correct? They win the division.
Yeah.
How about that? Division. So, I mean, Wisconsin is in a must-win situation, just like Iowa and Minnesota are in a must-win situation. This is a fun race. I sure hope it doesn't end up being Wisconsin winning, but it's a fun race right now.
And I have a weird feeling that this is going to be like this for a couple of years now, where you know, if you start seeing, you'll start seeing those four-way races, three-way races near the end. Because I think Purdue's gotten better, and I will say this: I think Brett Bielema going to Illinois, he could make this thing interesting too.
Oh, he's already made it interesting. That's a good football team, and they don't have a quarterback right now. They don't have skill position players besides Chase Brown. That's going to be a good program in 2 years, and that's why I'm all for Iowa hiring Brett Bielema if they can get him. If Kirk retires the next couple of years. You're right. That's a I don't want to say a sleeping giant, but that the Illinois team has a chance to be really good in the coming years.
Yeah, and we also don't know next year how well the Wildcats are going to be because they're always that wild card.
That's right. Yep, they can have a 3-9 year and follow it up with a 10-2 year.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, nice talking to you. I'll listen to the rest of the show.
All right.
And have a nice day.
Appreciate it, Dave. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Appreciate the call from Dave. And our line is open. If you want to call in here for the final few minutes, we're going to at least make it to 7 o'clock. And if we have any callers around 7, we'll at least promise you 7 o'clock here. We're officially over 2 hours. Doesn't feel like we've been on here this long. Again, if you missed the first part of our show, we are operating on a different caller line this evening because we had some technical issues with our Voice of College Football line. But if you want to call us, 515-635-1601. It's the bottom of your screen, bottom ticker, 515-635-1601. I want to remind everybody, if you're an Iowa fan and you like Iowa postgame with Don Patterson, you're also likely to like Iowa basketball postgame with Coach Gary Close. We are over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. And when you do that, you'll be able to watch myself and Coach Gary Close breaking down Iowa basketball games throughout the season. And if you don't know who Gary Close is, you probably didn't follow Iowa basketball during its heyday under Tom Davis, because Gary was a huge part of that. Coached the likes of Jess Settles, Chris Kingsbury, Kenyon Murray, all those guys during the Davis era. And Gary has been so great so far, and we're still early in the season. But again, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. We do have another call here on the Voice of College Football. Thank you for calling Iowa Post Game at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? John who?
D. Dalfelt.
Oh, how are you, John?
I texted you. I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Love the show. Love what you're doing with Don. I think Don was on a local radio station over here in by Iowa City for years, and I used to listen to him on Mondays. But it's great that you got him on your show.
He is a terrific mind, and there's no, I mean this, I'm trying to suck up to him. There is nobody that I would rather have on the show than Don Patterson, and I really feel that way. There's nobody that offers as much insight and who is a kinder individual and who knows as much as he does about Iowa football, and yet is still level-headed about the game. Don Patterson is terrific. I agree with you.
Well, I think it was interesting the other day. I was watching one of your videos, and I think you had made a comment to Don to provide the Kurt about I can't remember, when I was quarterbacking, I think, or something. But he's got Kirk's ear, right?
Well, he sits down. Yeah, no, he shares. He sits down with Kirk every week and runs through the top parameters for victory that week according to history of each Big Ten team. So no, I mean, him and Don are very good friends, and that's why, I try to be careful and respectful to Don, not to ask questions that are going to put him in a compromising situation. But yeah, no, he's very close with Kirk.
So I have a question for you, because I watched the game today. I have season tickets. I didn't go. I wasn't feeling well. But I almost wish I had gone, because I would have been, instead of screaming at the TV, I would have been screaming at Brian. But and I have nothing personally against Brian Ferentz. I think he got the job because of his last name. But I want him to succeed. Okay, I'm not against him. It's just confounding, the play calling. It doesn't seem like it's building upon anything, and I can't figure it out. But there was an interesting comment that Kirk made this week about Padilla, and he said, and I don't want to take it out of context or just limit it to what he said about him, but what I heard was the best thing about Padilla is he threw the ball away when he was supposed to. And I thought about that in the context of today's game. Well, it just looked like they neutered it, I mean, I don't know what was going on. I mean, part of it is the last two games we just haven't had the ball enough. I mean, both, well, particularly Minnesota. Minnesota just ran the clock down, but you have long drives and you just don't get as many opportunities. And we had these drop passes on third down where you just don't get, you don't get three more plays. So I don't know. What was your take on Padilla today? Because I still have hope, that he's the answer for a lot of the problems. But I don't know. What did you think?
I don't. I'm sort of. I'll be anxious to hear from Don tomorrow, because I don't think he was great today. But if you had not shown me the stat sheet, I would not have guessed that he was 6 of 17 for 83 yards and an interception. I just wouldn't have guessed that, because to me, especially early on, he looked good, and he did. Again, there were a lot of drops. There were a lot of plays, I thought, in this game where Illinois just took the deep ball away, and I think they were scheming against what they saw last week against Minnesota when Iowa was able to get the ball downfield. And so we did see a lot more of motion in the backfield and handoffs to guys like Bruce and certainly Gavin Williams and Tyler Goodson. And they did run the ball effectively, so part of it's the run game worked. I mean, last week we didn't run the ball effectively, so you had to start taking shots down the field. So I guess from a play calling standpoint, maybe I'm being a little bit too hard on Brian Ferentz, because you play with what your opponent gives you to a degree. Last week they had to rely on the pass more. This week they certainly relied on the run game more, and they won both games. So I do think Alex Padilla is the quarterback moving forward. I'll be very disappointed. I don't think it'll happen. I'll be very disappointed if Spencer Petras is the starter against Nebraska. I just don't see what that does. I don't know what advantage does that get you, because to me, Alex has shown that he can make all the throws Spencer makes, with the exception being maybe the deep ball. I'm still not convinced that Alex Padilla has as good of a deep ball as Spencer Petras, because Spencer did have a really nice ability to get the ball downfield to his receivers and on point. I think we sometimes forget that fact. But I do believe Alex Padilla is the quarterback moving forward.
Well, that's good. I mean, I hope that happens. I wonder, though, if they don't get into these guys' heads, and I would even include Petras with this, of you can't turn the ball over. You can't throw picks. And I think if you hear that enough, I don't know, I've never been a Division I quarterback, but you would think if you keep hearing that, it would have an effect on how you throw or where. right?
Yeah, it's a fine line because the number one, and Don Patterson talks about this all the time, the number one parameter for winning or losing in the Big Ten. Do you know what it is, caller?
Turnovers.
It's turnovers. So I understand. I mean, that's why Kirk has won so many games here, because he's had a really good defense, solid special teams, and his teams traditionally don't turn the ball over much, with the exception being like 2009. And again, they made up for that with great skill position talent that year. But it's a fine line to dance, because you're right. You don't want to instill a tentative, a
No,
quarterback
that's what
who's
you had
not
with Spencer, right? Spencer was afraid. I thought he looked fearful out there, frankly.
Yeah,
He did
I will
not
say
look
this,
comfortable.
and I don't know if that's coaching or if that's just Spencer. Spencer, to me, never has looked comfortable in the pocket, whereas even when Alex has thrown the ball away, to me, he still looks comfortable in the pocket. I don't remember a time where I'd say Alex looks uncomfortable in the pocket. Do you?
No, and his body language, when he's in the huddle, breaks the huddle, goes to the line of scrimmage, he looks confident.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
To what a degree that has in production, I don't know, but
we could say the same thing about Nate Stanley. Like Nate Stanley,
yeah,
I think. I don't know how to evaluate Nate looking back, because I was never real impressed with Nate. He didn't have a great deep ball ever. He wasn't real accurate. Sometimes he had a problem taking some zip off his balls. He had some of the same issues that guys like Petrus had. The one difference was Petrus actually reined in the deep ball and Nate did not. Now, the advantage Nate had is Nate was, even though he was a statue back there, he could throw out of the pocket. He had a good ability to stay on his feet when Petrus drops on a moment's notice. But Stanley had the ability to stay on his feet and take a hit in the pocket. But Stanley also had some pretty darn good receivers and tight ends as well. I mean, think about what Stanley had around him: Hawkinson, Fant, Smith Marset, Wadley. Oh, yeah. It's incredible. So I don't know how to evaluate Spencer. I still don't think, I don't think Spencer is the worst thing to ever happen to this offense. I think there are bigger problems. And if Spencer were to start on Friday, I'd be disappointed. But I would by no means say that's the deal breaker in the game, because Spencer's shown the ability to win games. I mean, they did go 6-2 last year, and they started off 6-0 with him this year. I know you can't put all the
played better last year, actually, but
I don't know about that, because to me he was not very good last year.
He was not good, but we can debate that. But I think a lot of these wins you could have won with a lot of different quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm saying they're not winning because Petrus is so good. We're winning, he's
in spite of him being good.
Some throws, but
poor. Yeah.
And when I look at it, I see Padilla, who has way more. I mean, there was one play today where Spencer would have been down, maybe even fumbled, the ball, and Padilla gets out of the just out of the grasp of the defender. Rolls out, and I think he even made a throw, and maybe on the run. I think it's probably dropped. But Petrus can't make that play.
Yes, and it's
impossible for him to make
the difference. The offense is not taking sacks now like they were, and that's the deal breaker to me. I feel I'll say this. I feel really bad for Spencer Petrus, because he's a good human being. He's a good person, and I think he's a smart kid. I think he loves Iowa. He has been so humble in all of this. You haven't heard him complain. He's right there helping Alex through everything. And you know how much that would suck to come in here and be the starter all of last year, go 6-2. You start off 6-0.
It'd be crushing.
And then 3 games later, you're benched.
Yeah.
And
if you're on social media at all, you get all these guys that are bashing you.
I know. I mean,
all you're trying to do is win. And he's not trying to lose. He's not trying to be bad. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. We need to be careful what we say about these, especially if we get on social media. But I think Padilla, if we get Padilla some comfort level here through the rest of these games and into next year, I think we've got something there with these young receivers. So
I agree. Receivers look good right now.
I like Gavin Williams. I know there's several people who have talked about Goodson, and I just see him making business decisions. I mean, he had some fantastic runs today, and so that's another thing we can talk about. But a lot of times he's so tentative to that line of scrimmage, he almost falls backwards instead of pushing into the line.
What do you mean?
To try to break an arm tackle.
What do you mean he's making business decisions?
Well, he's not taking straight-on contact, so he doesn't get hurt.
You're saying he's trying to protect his body?
Yeah.
Well, he's not. Tyler Goodson is in no position to be fearing that he's going to hurt his draft stock, because I don't hear any hype about him in the NFL draft.
Well, that doesn't mean he still isn't trying to protect himself.
Well,
but
if he's doing that, he's foolish. If he's doing that, he's foolish.
But my point wasn't that I'm not, looking to downgrade what Tyler Goodson is. My point is that Gavin Williams goes. There's no fear there. There's no time to.
I like him too.
He's got more bulk to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think there's some plays there that Brian could be doing to tailor more to the individual backs. Instead of trying to run Goodson between the tackles. And did we see any screens today?
No.
To Goodson? I can't.
No.
I mean,
we don't run very many screens. We don't run very many screens.
Though. They work with him.
I know Padilla overthrew a couple against Northwestern, and I wonder if that sort of freaked out the coaching staff a bit. But that's no reason to desert that play. And I also think they've sort of replaced the running back screen with the bubble screen and the tunnel screen, and they're using guys like Bruce more in those screen plays, and Keegan Johnson. So I agree. I'd like to see more from Tyler Goodson. I don't know why we don't try to get him in the open field more. It's sort of like Akram Wadley. I mean, Goodson to me is a better all-around back than Wadley was. But to me, both of those guys excel when you get them in the open field. I wouldn't mind seeing Tyler Goodson line up in the slot at times. And we don't ever do that either. But,
that would be another way to use him.
We've got plenty of guys to play slot. I mean, I'm not trying to imply that they don't have enough skill position talent there, because they do. But you're right. The screen game is something that we have not seen much, at least lately.
Yeah. Well, and thought the defense played pretty good. It's kind of concerning, I think, that we don't seem to be able to tackle in the first quarter. And I'm not sure what's going on there. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
As the game progresses.
Yeah, it is. Well, we just don't play well defensively in the first few minutes ever. Like almost all of our points. I'd like to go back and track this. The majority of our points that Iowa's given up have been first quarter points, and I don't understand why that is. Like, even go back to Maryland. People forget we won that game like 51-14. Maryland was up like 14-10 early on in that game, and I don't. That's a weird thing about Phil Parker's defenses, and it hasn't really come back to bite Iowa much, because Iowa seems to clamp down and the offense does enough to pull ahead. But at some point, that's going to burn you. And you could argue it did burn them, I guess, against Wisconsin and Purdue, because they fell into an early hole and never really recovered.
Yeah. And it looked like we were headed the same way today. But for
Charlie Jones
kick return.
Yeah.
That was a good play. Almost wish I'd gone just to see that. But hey, Cory, thanks. I've been wanting to call in for some time, and
all right,
just appreciate the show.
Yep, and hope you can join us tomorrow night with Don.
Yeah, I'll try.
All right, take care.
Go Hawks.
All right, appreciate the call there from our Eastern Iowa caller, it sounded like, and our call line is open here for the final few minutes, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. We will be back to our Voice of College Football caller line tomorrow, assuming we get the technical issue fixed, which I'm not sure what that technical issue was, but we're using a different caller line this evening, and it is a local line, 515-635-1601. By the way, that is the same line that we use for our Iowa basketball postgame, which is being held throughout the Iowa men's basketball season with Coach Gary Close, former Iowa assistant and former Wisconsin assistant, who went to a couple different Final Fours with Bo Ryan, Coach Frank Kaminsky, and Nigel Hayes, Sam Decker, all those guys at Wisconsin. Gary brings a ton of expertise. So again, if you haven't already subscribed to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube, please do that, and be sure to subscribe right here, Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube as well. But again, our line right now is open, 515-635-1601. All right, Tyler Goodson, 27 carries, $132. Alex Padilla, 6 of 17, 83 yards, and a touchdown. The receiving game, I mean, obviously Arlen Bruce got a lot of touches. He looked good. I think sometimes we get a little bit too infatuated with a player or two. We saw that Illinois eventually started to sniff out some of those designed runs for Bruce, but he is a weapon who will continue to be used. All these receivers need to improve on drops. There's too many drops right now. We've seen Keegan drop balls. Luke Lachey dropped the ball. Was it today? I believe it was today. Sam Laporta's had problems with drops. Tyrone Tracy's had problems with drops. Reganey's now having issues with drops. Charlie Jones is usually pretty sure-handed, has had at least a drop these last couple of weeks, and it's going to happen here or there, but it seems like they've had more drops as the season has progressed. I'm not sure why that is. Certainly the change at quarterback may have something to do about it with it. We had a caller earlier bring up the fact that Padilla does not have the tight spiral on his ball like Spencer Petras does. That's an accurate point. I have noticed that, and that could just play a role. Although it doesn't really explain Petras. Let me get my players straight. Arlen Bruce and Keegan Johnson's issues, because, of course, they've practiced with Padilla since they got here in the spring. Michael Weber asks, do you see Nebraska being favored by 2 or 3 points over Iowa? The Huskers will eventually win one of those close games, hoping it's not Friday versus the Hawkeyes. I do not see Nebraska being favored in this game. I could see Iowa by 1, maybe 1.5. You're not going to favor a 3-8 Nebraska team against a ranked Iowa team, even though it's in Lincoln. But anybody who's watched Nebraska knows it's going to be a close game next week. I would be absolutely dumbfounded, shocked, floored if Nebraska finds a way to beat Iowa, if Iowa finds a way to beat Nebraska by more than a touchdown. I mean, look what they did today in Madison, putting up 28 against maybe the best defense in the country, minus Georgia. It has been impressive, but got to win this Friday. The West hopes are still alive. The light is very thin. It's a sliver of light right now as far as the chances at a West championship. But as long as Iowa wins Friday, we've got a shot heading into Saturday, and then we'll all be Minnesota fans come Saturday. Steve brings up a good point about Nebraska. They continue to improve in certain facets, and they've done a lot with. I don't think they've got great wide receiver talent. Their best wide receiver may still be Oliver Martin, which I find is ironic. Nebraska ends up with an Iowa City kid in Oliver Martin as their number one receiver. Iowa ends up with a Nebraska guy as its number one receiver in Keegan Johnson. I think Iowa got the better end of that deal. Good to see Pisswater here this evening. He says if Iowa would have lost, Padilla is still the answer. Petras is not doing the job. I don't know, maybe that's what he meant. Should know after that, after watching him for 17 games. In his defense, he was winning a lot of those games, but I agree, Padilla is the guy right now. Charles, you can criticize Padilla while also acknowledging that he's the quarterback moving forward, because he wasn't great today. I think there were other aspects of the offense that weren't great today. But Padilla, you can't look at that line, 6 of 17 for 83 yards and an interception as being great. But he did make plays. We saw his ability to slide, right? We saw the slide today. That's like the first quarterback slide from an Iowa quarterback that I've seen. I can't remember the last time I saw an Iowa quarterback slide. Maybe Stanzi or maybe Vandenberg. That's ridiculous. But Small Town Movie Critic says, I think it's the same thing. It's always been the problem with Iowa offense, which is why they don't take risks and they don't have any imagination. They tried to pull off the throw back to Padilla. I like the play call. Now, it ended up being a roughing the passer. I thought it could have been targeting because, man, that Illinois defender launched at Reganey. And if that's not targeting, I don't really know what the rule is then. If I thought you had to launch high into a quarterback, that's exactly what he did. He launched into Reganey, who was the quarterback on the play. But I do like the throwback to Padilla. Charles, and answer your question about Iowa basketball postgame. He's asking if Coach Close will make more appearances during Big Ten play. Coach Close will be with us even throughout non-conference play. A couple things have hemmed us up for 2 of the first 4 games. One of the games would have been who was Iowa's second game against? North Carolina? No, it wasn't North Carolina Central. Whoever they played in game 2, Gary was Missouri, Kansas City. Gary was actually at a Wisconsin game because the University of Wisconsin, they were honoring Coach Bo Ryan. So Gary wanted to be a part of that. He went to the Kohl Center. And then Tuesday, I called Gary off. I just said, we're not going to be able to do the show because of my surgery on Tuesday, during the morning hours on Tuesday. So I didn't even go on Tuesday. And the exhibition was an exhibition, so we didn't have him on for that. But no, he should be with us moving forward. There will be days where Gary won't be able to jump on, but more often than not, he will be on, I will be on. And if he's not on, I still will be taking your calls, your comments, your questions following Iowa basketball games. And again, if you missed that earlier, you can check us out on YouTube on the bottom ticker there, From the Hawkeye of the Storm. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. So again, subscribe to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. Subscribe on or follow us on Twitter and follow us on Facebook as well. Let's see here. Yeah, the Toure kid for Nebraska, he probably is the best receiver. You're right. He's turned into their best receiver. I don't know where he was. I guess I haven't followed Nebraska football close enough. He was not really a factor early on. But you're right. He looked good today against Wisconsin, man. He made some plays. And whoever the big number 11 is for Nebraska, their tight end is playing well right now. So Iowa's going to have problems. Nebraska is tricky offensively. And if they can continue to, I mean, they use this weird, I'll have to ask Don about this option play where they basically have a tailback who runs a circle around the quarterback to his backside. And it's just some weird action. I'm sure it's nothing that the coaches haven't seen before, but it is sort of an odd formation. And, it worked against Wisconsin, 28 points again against maybe the best defense in college football besides Georgia. Hawkeye Howard says that he will be with us here on Sunday night, tomorrow night. Appreciate that. We will be here, and I also appreciate the well wishes from everybody on our surgery, my surgery, I should say. Small Town Movie Critic. I am recovering well. It was a shoulder surgery, and as you can see, I'm moving my shoulder. I don't have any brace or any sling, so I'm doing great. I'm very pleased with University of Iowa. Does a tremendous job just from a medical standpoint. They have the best medical professions in the Midwest, in my opinion. Maybe you could say Mayo is right up there with them, but man, they are great, and I appreciate the hard work they did to get me in shape. So certainly on the mend. Small-time movie critic asks, how is Iowa going to deal with Nebraska's quarterback? Iowa defense always has a problem with a quarterback that can run. I will say this, small-time movie critic. I said that heading into the season, but Iowa really hasn't had that problem with quarterbacks who can run. I mean, let's be honest. Most of these guys Iowa has played can run. Purdy can run. Penix could run. Tagovailoa can run. The kid from Colorado State, Centeo, could run. I will say Clifford hurt Iowa before he went down. Clifford hurt Iowa. I tend to think that if Clifford had not went down in that game, Iowa would have probably lost that game. We'll never know. Injuries are part of the game. Adrian Martinez is the best dual threat quarterback that Iowa has faced up until this point. I thought it might have been Purdy, but I think Martinez is. But Martinez has also shown that he at times makes poor decisions, but he's got a great upside. And And it's unfortunate for him that it's just not been consistent enough, and I don't think the pieces around him have been consistent enough. You could say the same thing about some of Iowa's quarterbacks in the past, just not having the pieces. Again, Toure has really emerged, it seems like, as far as a wide receiver threat. But yeah, I think Iowa will be okay there. Charles brings up an interesting point. They just need to spy him. Remember, Iowa didn't spy Clifford the entire game. Again, when he was in there, Iowa didn't spy him at all. So you hope that Phil will make a change there. But Phil doesn't typically run a spy with this linebacking core. They did that a lot more with Josie Jewell. Remember, Josie was terrific in that role back in 2017. I don't know if they will. That's a good question. They made, I could easily see Friday seeing an early touchdown for Nebraska. And if that happens, the defense has to be lock solid, because if they don't, if they fall down by 14-0, or they fell down 10-0 today, but this is a much more pedestrian Illinois offense comparatively when you're looking at Illinois and Nebraska together. And Iowa had a huge favor done by Charlie Jones on that 100-yard kick return. So, they can't dig themselves a big hole on the road against Nebraska. So you got to get off to a quicker start. I'd like to see a spy early. Again, that'll be an interesting topic for Don tomorrow night. Max brings up the option play. Yep, they continue to do that today against Wisconsin, against Ohio State. They did the same thing. Kevin Paul brings up Phil Parker calls the same game against Toure as he did against Bell, then it will be bad. I don't think Toure is what Bell is, certainly. But you're right. With Adrian Martinez's ability to throw, I'd take Adrian over Aiden O'Connell, because Adrian is an athlete, and O'Connell is really not. O'Connell was just able to sit back in the pocket all day because Iowa couldn't get pressure on any of the Purdue quarterbacks. Penn State has more designed QB runs, whereas Martinez makes that decision most times on his own. You're right. Clifford has the ability to throw on the run, which is tough, but I think Martinez does as well. Martinez made some impressive throws today, running backwards with pressure on him. He's got a heck of an arm, so Iowa will have some issues next week. I don't have a lot of confidence in the D-line being able to get to the quarterback, but if they can at least contain him, I agree with Charles here, that will be massive. They're going to have to be able to contain him as best they can. Nick brings up, Hawks did very well against the run today. Surprised me after last week. I feel like they can contain Martinez on Friday just because they have shown great gap discipline. Minnesota's a better run team, Nick. I'm not trying to take anything away from Brown for Illinois, because he is a big play threat. But Illinois just doesn't have the horses up front that Minnesota does. So I would expect Nebraska to run the ball fairly effectively. I mean, they don't have a great run game, but I don't think you can necessarily. It's not apples to apples with Minnesota and Illinois as far as the pieces you have up front. Iowa did play the run well today. They did not allow any big plays, which I could have easily seen a big run play for Illinois, and it just never happened. But again, give credit to this defense. They stepped up after a slow start. Max brings up, he says, maybe Toure isn't as good, but with all the good wide receivers in the conference, he's really gotten lost in the shuffle. Unbelievable deep play threat and really hard to bring down in open space. That's absolutely true, and I've said it all year long. This has been the year of the quarterback, the year of the wide receiver. It's not the year of the quarterback. I don't remember the last time the Big Ten has had this many good wide receivers, and I'm talking David Bell, Chris Olave, Ty Freifogel. It's a hard name to get out. Chris Ottman-Bell. I'd even throw Keegan Johnson in the mix, Jahan Dotson. I mean, you can go on and on and on. There are so many good receivers in this league. It's incredible. And I know I'm missing another kid from Ohio State. Toure is another kid from Nebraska who has been really impressive. And again, I'm probably missing other players out there because it's just been an incredible year at wide receiver for the Big Ten in general, which was necessary because it's been a sort of a disappointing year from the quarterback perspective, all across the conference, minus maybe CJ Stroud. Small movie critic. I know this is early, but where do you see us going for a bowl game? I I sure hope it's a New Year's Six bowl. They beat Nebraska and make it to make it to 10-2. I don't know if you can. I'd have to look at how the bowl games are set up. If you can make a New Year's Six bowl without going to the championship game, that'd be great. I question whether there'll be enough bowl slots for that to happen. Because again, you're probably going to look at whoever wins. It'd probably be Wisconsin, right? So Wisconsin, even though they have one more loss than Iowa would overall, they would probably end up getting the nod for a New Year's Six bowl. Again, if Ohio State makes the playoff, which they probably will, maybe Wisconsin gets a bid to the Rose Bowl, and then maybe a different bowl. I don't know. Again, I'd have to look at how, because I know there's some flexibility there with some of these other bowl games, and the playoff throws those bowl games off as well as far as the rotation. If it's not the Rose Bowl, if it's not a New Year's Six bowl, I don't want to say they're all the same, but all I can say is I hope Iowa gets an opponent from the SEC or an Oregon or someone good. I don't want to see Missouri on the schedule again, okay? And we never got to see that game last year, but that might have been for the best because Missouri was not a good football team. The Mayfield Ice Cream Bowl, that could happen. Minnesota beating Bucky, that would be great. Austin Allen, I'm assuming he's talking. That's the kid from Nebraska again, number 11. Yeah, he was terrific. Charles says he'd love to see an NIT version of the CFP. If that happens, we already have too many bowl games, Charles. But if that were to happen, I don't know how that would happen. I don't know how that'd work. Like an NIT New Year's Six. So you call it like a New Year's Eve 6? Should we call it that? Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it. We're going to be back tomorrow. So again, if you missed it earlier, we'll have a special edition of Iowa Live with Coach Don Patterson, 7 p.m. tomorrow, right here, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. We'll be taking your calls, taking your chats, and talking about not only Iowa, Illinois, but I'm sure the majority of the show will be talking about Iowa and Nebraska. And I'm sure Don will offer his take on Minnesota, Wisconsin, because that is just as big. If you're looking at Iowa in the championship race, Minnesota, Nebraska, or Minnesota, Wisconsin this next weekend will be huge as far as determining who wins this division. And the glass half full approach looks at this and says, hey, at least Iowa is in contention still for the West heading into the final week. Had they lost any of these previous 3 games, Iowa would be out of consideration for the West. The fact is they've won each of these last 3 games. They haven't been pretty. Not one of these games has been pretty, but they've found a way to win. And that's all you can hope for right now. So again, we'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. with Coach Don Patterson. We'll also be back. You'll see in the bottom ticker there, Iowa Live with Mark Rogers. We'll be back on our Tuesday schedule, Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. Central Time, right here, Iowa football at the Voice of College Football. If you want to make a donation to our show, check the description below, and you'll be able to find a link to do that. And you can specify that it's for the Iowa channel. Make a note of that in your donation process, that it's for the Iowa channel. That helps us out. And, of course, we'll be back Monday, right? Monday for Iowa basketball postgame with Coach Gary Close following Iowa and Western Michigan. So Iowa gets the win again tonight, folks. Final score 33-23 over the Fighting Illini. Iowa moves to 9-2 on the season in anticipation of a big showdown for the Heroes Trophy in Lincoln on Friday. We'll talk to you soon, folks. Take care. See you tomorrow.